Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I wonder if I'll have to record this. Da 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 do. Do do do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Let's put some music on. Makes no difference, but when you hold on to the past, then you would break down what little is left. Yeah, there's nothing more you can ignore, but say it makes no difference to me. Let's go for 4,000. Do 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 do. Okay, go back to the previous stream bitrate. Let's go for 3,000 there. Nice. Do do do. Okay, what do I want to put down? Conquest version 2.0. Readout. And Old Dominion readout. we go. There we go. Now that you're older, life's weighing on your shoulders. You can't seem to... narrative bulletin. With more things so basic, you might as well face it. You can't help but worry, it's all just begun. So when you hold on to the past, then you will break down what little is left. And yeah, there's nothing more you can ignore. It'd say it makes no difference to me. It makes no difference to me. What's the difference with the bitrate? Like, I want to know. It's lower than the recommended, sure, but like, what does it mean? How do I comment? Ducks. Chat. Chat, where are you? Oh, here it is. No, what? Why is chat disabled? Wait, why is chat disabled? Let's see. Why? Testing. Studio mode. So when you hold on to what in the world? Yes. The Ephesus? Yes. No. What's the transform? Fit the screen. Sure. Makes no difference. How do I? Okay. Okay, I think this is fine. Alright, well, testing the chat one more time. I got rid of the thing that says like this for kids, so I should be able to speak now. I think should be good. Alright, I think we're good. Cool. I'm gonna try it, whatever. Okay, hey guys, this is Vitug and Hilder here for my first live stream, the official one. Hopefully this one doesn't actually crash like my previous attempts at a live stream. There may be, what, 1, 2, 3 of you guys watching, or at least listening in. That's all I want, is people listening in, because today we're just talking about Conquest 2.0 and reading the Old Dominion's stat line, the army list. Things are looking really good for my favorite army, and I'm liking what they've done for version 2.0. There's nothing much that's really changed, except for infantry. I should go over to the showtime. How do I scroll with this thing? I see this, but how do I interact? Like this? Oh, cool. Can I? Right, if I go like this. Awesome! Cool, I didn't know I could just do this straight from OBS. Does it look correct? Nice. Alright, so can I increase? Starting with the facts. The TLDR I'm going to read in a bit, but for now let's just read the facts because it has everything broken down in the more lawyers terms. And I think that's what makes a lot more sense if you want to get to the meat of it. For those who are veterans, this will make a lot more sense. For those who are new, this won't make too much sense, so you guys can just like try to drone it out. When I start reading the TLDR, that's when you guys can listen in. Anyway, let's read it. Conquest, the Last Arguments of Kings is a living war game. Oh wait, okay, so this part is always the same. Anytime they have an errata, they have this disclaimer, this funny disclaimer about Yuger being a test creatures, so on and so forth. It's just part of their... Oh, whoa. Popping myself a soda. Just part of their humor, part of their brand. It's all good. I'm not sure if that got caught. I hope not. Update 2.0, Designer's Notes. So these are Q&As, and I think I asked some of these in the happy hours, and it got written down. Here's what it says. The first question. Now that the wound's characteristics is based on the stand rather than the model, how will I remove models correctly when taking wounds? The answer is, you no longer need to remove infantry models. Much like brutes or cavalry, you simply remove the stand when it loses all its wounds. So, this is a big change. It used to be that infantry models, as you remove models, the overall strength of the regiment is decreased, like wound per wound. But now we treat the infantry stands much like the other units in this game, infantry, brutes and cavalry, where brutes and cavalry are specifically a regiment of single models each. minimum size of 3 models or 3 stands. When it reaches a certain cap of wounds, usually 4, you can remove that stand and the regiment loses its combat potential. Now infantry is going to be based on that. Once it accumulates a certain amount of wounds, the entire stand is removed. You're not removing per model now, which is really good. Very simple. Since this is a rank and file game and that's what it wants to market itself as, it makes a lot of sense that we're being simplified to this point. Also will mean things like Dragon Slayers will make a lot more sense. I'm thinking, I haven't looked at the Dwegom's list, but I'm thinking Dragon Slayers would have 6 or 7 wounds, because I think it's on this errata that's going to clarify that. Second question, why did characteristics change to be on a per stand basis? Up until update 1.5.1, we were faced with a troubling issue in regards to infantry regiments. Having characteristics on a model basis meant that the defensive or offensive output of an infantry stand could only be adjusted in increments of 4. That made certain stands weak and out of theme at 4 wounds, but almost game-breaking at 8 wounds, for example. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the Dragon Slayers. And also the Nords had the upcoming heavies that were coming up. It was the Steel Chosen, I think. Those guys also had 2 wounds each. But truly, yeah, if the infantry had 1 wound each, then some things just didn't make sense. Before the Dragon Slayers had their 2 wounds about a year ago, they were each just 1 wound, and Dragon Slayers for their cost died way too easily at 1 wound. But when they became 2 wounds, all of a sudden Dragon Slayers were they were even stronger than brutes of other factions. For example, the Old Dominion has Bone Golems. Those guys are heavies, they pack a punch, everything, they're great, but they have a maximum of 6 wounds per model. Dragon Slayers, at a little bit over that point cost of a minimum size of Bone Golems, had 8 wounds per model and did more per model against things like Bone Golems. So this makes sense. By adjusting characteristics on a per stand basis allowed us to assign, there should be a comma somewhere, allowed us to assign much more reasonable characteristics to infantry stands. Now, for example, Dragon Slayers can be 6 wounds or a stand of Wadroon having 5 attacks rather than their previous 4. This effectively makes additional rules like Fury 5 obsolete, streamlining the game further. So this paragraph is very interesting. Yeah, like I said before, Dragon Slayers, if it's by stands now, every stand of Dragon Slayers will have 6 wounds and then the stand is removed. That's good because it keeps it balanced as an infantry. And also it's thematically cool because Dragon Slayers are supposed to be the best of the Dwegom. So it's cool that they're able to last longer than just normal regiments at 4 wounds, usually. And the idea of having Wadroon with 5 attacks really goes to helping improve what I thought were weak infantry on the Wadroon. Because the Wadroon's theme is, of course, the tribal orcs, but they were very glass cannony. They died really fast, and they hit just as well as other infantry. But with this, it actually makes them more specialized. The glass cannon becomes a true glass cannon, emphasizing the cannon more than the glass in this case. So that would mean, like, whatever their baseline infantry is, I forgot what they're called, they actually will do a lot more now. It makes them more reliable. So I'm happy that the Wadroon are getting that buff. Hopefully they don't have to rely so much on dinosaur T-Rex spam, because that's annoying. And honestly, it's such a high risk, low reward for them sometimes. I'm happy that they're able to change up their strategy in the meta. Next question. Wait, does that mean if I heal a single wound, I get to restore an entire stand? The answer is, that would have been very powerful indeed. However, restoring stands have been amended. Now you need to be able to heal at least half of the stand's wounds, rounded up, before you can restore that stand. Alright, so going back to the Dragon Slayers. I have absolutely no idea if... Wait, actually, you know what? Let me put some music in the background first. Before I keep talking, because it's kind of boring just hearing my voice, I think. Hopefully it's not too loud. Alright. Let me know if it's too loud, guys. I'm looking at the chat to see if anyone says anything. It still says disabled on my side. Oh well. I'm just going to manually lower the volume. 2.5. Reduce the volume here. There. That should help with my voice. Back to what I was saying about the healing. So if the Dragon Slayers go up to 6 wounds, that means that a spellcaster will have to cast a number of successes equal to 3 wounds at least. Rounded up. 3 wounds rounded up would be 4? I'm not quite sure I understand about the rounded up part, because when you heal, it's usually by whole numbers. I don't think I've ever seen a half heal. Okay, I'm gonna have to go back to that because I have absolutely no idea what that means. At least half of the wounds rounded up. I'm thinking that there might be a change in healing then. I'm gonna have to look at the spires. They're the most annoying healing in this game. But for now, as far as I understand this question and this answer, yeah, for Dragon Slayers, which is the exception to the 4 wounds per infantry stand, you'll have to heal 3. I don't think that the Dragon even have a way for them to heal more than 2 wounds. But I'm not a Dragon player, so moving on. Question number 4. I noticed that my regiment has the Barrage 3 special rule. Does that mean that my regiment has 36 shots? Isn't that way too powerful? The answer is, we don't blame you. This does sound like something only the most powerful of ranged regiments would be able to have, and yet it seems like everyone has it. Thankfully, this is not how the Barrage X special rule works anymore. Exactly like the change in the characteristics, Barrage X is now applied on a per stand basis rather than a per model basis. Excellent. Pardon. Better yet, we changed the way the amount of volley attacks is calculated. Before, a player would have to A. Refer to Barrage X, then B. Measure range, then C. Determine who is within half range, then D. Half the amount of shots. And overall, take way too much time of doing redundant calculations rather than rolling dice and see your beautiful painted miniatures defeat their enemies. That's true. Okay. Big problem with 1.5 when we were playing it is that the number of shots that your ranged regiments would do was just ridiculous, because you had to calculate a lot of things. What they just streamlined here in that paragraph makes sense, and it kind of gave an idea of how we saw it, but it was more than that, because when you're trying to do all these calculations, you forget a lot of different things. So I'm happy that in 2.0 it's streamlined to just per stand. And on that stand's card, their command card, their list, it'll tell you, okay, how many shots does this regiment per stand have? It'll be 4. It'll be 5. Maximum. You don't have to think about it much. You just measure the distance, you look at the number of ranged attacks, and you roll the dice. Excellent. Thank you so much, Parabellum. Very helpful. Now simply refer to the Barrage X special rule, add +1 shot if within effective range, which is half range, and then fire away. No more obscuration and having at long distances. Instead, you get rewarded for smart maneuvering. Again, thank you so much, Parabellum. This is so helpful. Long range has always been an issue because it means that you're firing your expensive range unit, because usually for some reason rangers are expensive, and there's a good chance that you'll do some chip damage, but there's a decent chance, there's a usually higher chance that you get nothing for what you're shooting at. So things like longbowmen, they'll have their 30-inch. I don't know if that's been changed, but the longbowmen are the best long-range infantry. If they get their 30 range, then that means that if they can get to 15 inches range of an enemy, they'll have the number of shots per stand, which is probably going to be 4, +1. So each stand of infantry bows will have 5 shots at 15 inches. So much easier. You don't have to think about long range. The only obscuration that you'll have to think about would be terrain, which makes sense. I wish they changed more of the terrain rules. I looked at the actual rules thing. They didn't really do anything about it. So we're still stuck with the current issue with terrain, which is some of the rules say half of your stands are within it. Other rules say if you're just barely touching it, like the barest of the millimeters. If you're just 1 millimeter touching this thing, your entire regiment doesn't gain the bonus, such as the impact hits through hindering terrain. Next question. How do I calculate impact attacks now, and what is the impact X special rule? One of updates 2.0 major objectives. Okay, that's a little bit weird in terms of wording. One of update 2.0's major objectives was to further streamline the game and open up design space for future factions and regiments to grow and evolve. Rules like the previous iteration of impact attacks were quickly becoming a hindrance to this. Previously, when a player was calculating rules, worse yet, if it was a new and inexperienced player, they would have to A. Refer to the type of the regiment, then B. Refer to the number of attacks, then C. Divide said attacks and round up, then D. And support X, then so on and so forth. And you can quickly see how many steps were required for a process that should otherwise be fairly straightforward. That is true. Again, just like how shooting had a certain process to determine how many shots you had before you could even shoot, charging had that sort of issue as well. Now, it wasn't that much of an issue because, people love getting into melee, and melee is the most exciting part of this game. So people were more than happy to learn it, but it's true that some streamline was very much needed. And I'm happy to see that they're doing this as well, to make things go from calculations to just roll the dice. Now you no longer have to do any of these things. Simply, when calculating impact attacks, refer to the Impact X special rule, and that is how many you will be resolving. No longer is there a need for rules like unstoppable charge or indirectly affecting impact attacks through support or the attack's characteristics, making the process simpler and streamlined. Okay, now this is a little bit of a nerf, maybe. I also played 100 Kingdoms. I haven't looked at the 100 Kingdoms list, but one of the reasons why the 100 Kingdoms is strong is because they have a strong focus on cavalry. Their cavalry is the knights of old, think of Renaissance knights, King Arthur, so on and so forth. Those are what the 100 Kingdoms bring to the table to counter things like monsters, because the 100 Kingdoms are just normal men and women in Renaissance times, essentially. They don't have monsters. They have cavalry. One of the most powerful units in the 100 Kingdoms is the Templars. One of them is called the Crimson Tower. And their entire shtick is charging in and doing as much damage on the charge as possible. So unstoppable charge, if it's removed, I'm expecting to see the Crimson Tower Knights, the Templars that I was talking about, to do like 6 attacks per stand. 6 attacks per stand with every single attack on those Crimson Tower Knights. Because if not, then I don't know, they're just not terrifying enough for what you're bringing. I feel bad if it turns out that they're doing less. If they're doing like 4, if they're unstoppable, if instead of getting rid of unstoppable charge, the Crimson Tower Knights are doing like 4 attacks, that's okay, but at least make them good. Make it 5. 6 would be really nice. Or indirectly affecting impact attacks through support or the attack's characteristics. Now that part makes me think again of the 100 Kingdoms. One of the characters that you can bring is the noble, what I call the Knight Lord, a mounted noble lord. And the Knight Lord has an ability called Speed of Horse. It's a passive, affects the entire army. Speed of Horse is good because your household knights, a medium troop of cavalry, could guarantee themselves like 12, 14 attacks more on average. just the number of attacks they'll deal on the charge are a lot. You're still trying to fish for good hits, but at least you're getting a lot of dice to roll. And if you do it right, you might be able to break your enemy. But if that support attack is no longer affected by on impact attacks, I'm wondering, will speed of horse change? Will the Night Lord have a different supremacy ability? Because the entire purpose of him was that he wants to choose a knight unit to be with and make them slim but make them big so that they can charge in. The lore wise, it looks like a wedge. If you guys know the wedge formation, it's like you know how the birds, migrating birds would fly north or east, whatever. There's that one leader at the front and then everyone else follows like a wing behind them. That's what the idea is behind this. But if the supporting attacks are removed and it's just focused on impact rolls, will that count for the other cavalry following up behind? That's what I want to know. I can't really answer that yet because I haven't looked at the 100 Kingdoms, but let me know if you have an answer. I can't read it on chat because for some reason on my OBS it still says that chat is disabled for this live stream. But I'll be reading it after I upload the video. So next question, I think this will be the last. Maybe not. Yeah, this is the last question for now. I didn't like how broken seemed inconsequential in update 1.5.1. Enemy regiments would break and seemed like it barely affected them at all. The answer is, the broken status saw significant rework. Thank you! After all, breaking a regiment should be impactful, and we always wanted to reflect the chaos that a battlefield can quickly become. Now broken, in addition to what it did in 1.5.1, does not allow a regiment to charge, be healed, and seize objective zones. Now that is strong. Let me read the next paragraph first. This also means that duels have become a lot more potent as they can potentially cause a regiment to break and subsequently be shattered. Watch out for these mimetic assassins. So the Spires have a character that no one ever uses unless they really want to build a thematic list. It's called the mimetic assassin. And why it was useless was because if the enemy character just refuses to duel, which is what the mimetic assassins try to do, they want to duel the enemy and kill them in a duel. But if the enemy character refuses to duel, then you just draw that character card that refused to duel and say, I'm going to rally my troops. And the mimetic assassin was just completely useless. So now, with this broken status update, this means that if someone chooses to duel and they refuse, there's a stronger consequence to refusing the duel. And honestly, you'll have to figure out whether or not it's worth it to get your character killed or potentially saving your regiment at this point. Particularly that part about regiments not being able to charge, heal, or seize objectives. Okay, the charge part is like, if the enemy regiment is broken, they are not going to be charging. They're already engaged on something, usually. So that part is just extra. That's what I see. Be healed though. If a regiment is broken, they cannot be healed. That is incredible. What a nerf to the Spires. One of the biggest powers to the Spires was that it doesn't matter how many troops of theirs that get killed, they'll always be able to heal it up. And like being broken was still a problem for them, but very rarely is it possible for most opposing armies to just focus down the broken regiment and destroy it before the enemy, before the Spire's healer could bring back a lot of the troops and then rally directly afterwards, because the Spire's heal wasn't an active, it wasn't an action, it was just something passive. They could use it as an action, but usually they heal just through the passive method. So this means that yes, there is a counter to Spire's healing. Spires will have to change their strategy. I wonder if this is going to really affect the Spires to the degree that I'm thinking. What are the Spires medalics like now? Anyway, the siege objective ones is also very important, because if you break a bulk regiment, that means that you've stopped them from that means that bulk regiments will have to be very careful about their characters if they even have them. Things like the 100 Kingdoms Imperial Officer Death Star with militia, have been nerfed by this. It means that said Death Star is no longer the kind of thing that you want to send out, because the Imperial Officer is not exactly the best duelist. It means you'll have to think more critically about where you want to deploy and how you want to attack. Thank you, Parabellum. This is very helpful and means that strategy is so much more important than just gung-hoing the entire match. Some typos. Is there anything here? Oh yeah, okay. So automatic pass and fail. Everyone knew this. 6s are always fails, 1s are always successes, except for the defense roll. And let's see, the charge move. This is a good clarification. Issues with the charge. There are people who would argue that if they make the charge, then they just need to be in contact with the enemy regiment. But with this, the charge move has been clarified, meaning that you can't just charge your enemy. You have to be able to charge them at a point where they can where the rest of your regiments of your stands, where most of your stands are in contact with most of the enemy stands. So let's say you have a regiment of 3 stands and the enemy has a regiment of 5. You have to charge down the middle so that all 5 of the enemy stands are in contact with 3 of your stands. You can't just decide, oh, I'm going to charge one wing of the enemy's regiment so that I can minimize the enemy's attacks against me while maximizing my attacks against them. This is a very helpful addendum. There's a duplication and a decay. Okay, no one really cares about decay except for spires, and even then, most people in the spires, they don't make a mistake with this, so it's not really an issue. During the updating of support. Ah, okay. So while a regiment is engaged by enemy regiments in its flank or rear, they lose the Support X special rule. It's not like... Okay, this is helpful, just in general. Thank you for the clarification. Things like Legionnaires, when we're talking about the 100 Kingdoms, if they get charged in the flank, then the Death Star of Legionnaires can't just support. Wait, this is actually very interesting, now that I think about it. So that means attacking an enemy in the front, like being able to create that front line, is going to be important. Let's talk about the Legionnaire Death Star. On one of my lists, I had a Legionnaire list with 9 stands. And when you consider the fact that the Old Dominion is possibly the tankiest lineup in the entire game, because they don't have to take resolve issues, then you have to chew through 9 times 4 is 36. Yeah, you have to chew through 36 wounds, which is equal to maybe 5-6 rounds entirely. If you were to match them against another medium, if you put them against the Dragon Slayers, then maybe 2 or 3 rounds. But anyway, if a regiment is engaged, then we'll call it the hammer and anvil technique, where you have one unit absorb the attack and then another unit come in from behind or the flank, the sides, to counterpunch the attacking enemy regiment. This makes it so much more effective. Hammer and anvil is 100% back. Hannibal would be very proud. Turn the Tide. Now this is going to be interesting. Turn the Tide no longer... It used to be that Turn the Tide would still activate Aura of Death. Now it doesn't. Aura of Death will only activate after the card is drawn that was the Turn the Tide target. For example, if I have a Noble Lord and I had Militia on the battlefield within the Turn the Tide activation. Let's say the Militia is fighting against the Bone Golems, which have a built-in Aura of Death too. If I draw my Noble Lord and I activate as a draw event Turn the Tide onto those Militia, the Militia will not receive Aura of Death penalties. They won't suddenly get hurt out of nowhere. Instead, they can do their thing, and then when I next draw the Militia card, even though I do have to discard that card, my Militia will still have dealt their damage at maximum potential. With the current changes in the infantry being changed to a per stand basis, honestly, this is not as strong as it sounds. If it was still back to the position where it was per model, then yes, this would be pretty strong. You could really take advantage of Turn the Tide to bypass Aura of Death and maximize your damage before Aura of Death hurts you. But with the current changes, it doesn't really matter. This is a small addendum, very small buff to turn the tide, but it's still consequential. I'm happy to see that it's going to be used more at this point. This one's interesting. Is a character stand required to be placed in the center of the front rank of a regiment it is attached to? So, in addition to this rule, there is another rule that I read on the actual new rulebook for 2.0, and it's that the command stand of every regiment. The command stand is just one stand of the entire regiment size, but this command stand in particular, every command stand now, has to be at the center of your regiment. And if that's true, then that means characters can never be at the center of their regiment. They'll have to be on the flanks, or just they have to be on the front lines. They cannot take that center stage. There's gonna be an interesting thing to do, because that means that as your regiment dies, it'll be skewed towards the left or right based on your perspective. And not just that, it means that the command stand will be... Yeah, there's no weird random stuff that'll happen because of where the command stand is placed. Like the last stand to die. Let's see. Okay, I think I'll move on to Old Dominion at this point. The rules are pretty easy. Anything further than that is not really an issue at this point. Let me just switch over to the Old Dominion stuff. Where are you? Okay, I didn't download it. Let me go ahead and just download that. Old Dominion. Where are you? Parabellum.com. Rules and facts. Alright, I have it downloaded. Now I just need to choose it. I think it's so cool that OBS is able to do this for me. Army list, you're showing up, right? I hope so. There you are, awesome. Okay, interact. There you are. Let's read. I've only read up to the characters of the Old Dominion. I'm already in love with it. It's so good. It's so cool. The biggest thing that I noticed from the very beginning is some of the wording. And then the next thing I noticed was point changes. First off, army rules. We still keep, for animated vessels, rejoice, my friends, we still keep our terrifying 1. That means that we'll punch their resolve as we kill them. It's also helpful because we lack so many hammers. We just have very few hammers that don't rely on some kind of gimmick. We rely on too many gimmicks to make any hammers helpful in this army. I'm gonna have to read the Cataphractoi. I hope they get better. But yeah, animated vessel would help with just resolve bombing. Hopefully not every army just gets nerfed. Currently, what I feel is that the Old Dominion is actually on the weaker side, at least in 1.5.1. But where we are now, we'll see. Empowerment. This is cool. Some changes that I noticed was that these tiers have increased by 1. Tier 1 is the same, up to 7 points. No, Tier 1 is already the change, because you're supposed, in the previous version, once you hit 7 tokens, you've hit Tier 2. Everything has increased by 1. Why did they do that? I'm not quite sure. Did they think that Old Dominion reached tier 3 way too fast? In the meta, I know that people were doing like Hyro Deacon spam they would bring in too. Maybe that's what it is. I always brought narrative armies. So having to work for 8 tokens now, that's a lot. I have to sacrifice 2 regiments of legionnaires to get there. Yikes. Yikes indeed. Tier 4 at 22 tokens that's difficult. Dark Power tool pool, nothing changed there. There might have been some wording issues. There's a little bit of wording issues when it says on the tier 3, gaining the inspired special rule when performing a clash action unless they are broken. Okay, let me think about that. Unless they are broken. I guess this means that Kentark would be more useful at this point. When they are broken. I don't know what to think about that. At this point in the game, by the time you reach tier 3, if you're going for legions, you're not really thinking about... You're just thinking about hitting the enemy back and trying to reclaim what you've lost. Because if you manage to survive the initial wave, the later... Well, with the way Old Dominion plays, the later you survive, the stronger your army. And if it turns out that they crush you, the enemy starts crushing you early game, you better hope that your memories of old and your tiers get you to the next ability fast. But if broken... No, it doesn't really matter. It's not a big nerf. Old Dominion doesn't usually take Death Stars except for Death Star Legionnaires maybe. So I don't think it's much of an issue. I'm a little bit worried though. Who knows? Tier 4. In addition to the... Okay, so specifically this wording, right? In addition to the tier 3 benefits. That's very important because as we read on Fallen Pantheon, there's something there that I want to clarify that I don't think is how we read it. But anyway, tier 4 of the legions. We deal 1 additional wound for each failed resolve roll of 6. Whenever I think about that, I'm like, okay, bravery bombing the enemy on 6s. On 6s you deal 2 times the resolve damage. Is it really that worth it? It's just nice, I guess, but if you bring something like the Strategos guys, activate your glimmers of the golden age after you reach tier 2. Well, immediately after you hit tier 2, go ahead and just activate it. If you're poised to attack the enemy, do not wait to activate it when you hit tier 3 because your tier 4 bonus is not worth it. Activate it while you're still at tier 2. That's my tip. That's an Old Dominion guy. Fallen Pantheon. It's pretty much the same. The only difference is rather than giving Fury, you gain +1 attacks for every stand within 10 inches of the Fallen Divinity. That's a big change because if I remember correctly, it was just based on her font of Dark Power, which is up to 14 inches by the time she reaches tier 2. So that means the Fallen Divinity has been given a slight nerf in her aura. At the same time, though, it means that she won't eat your troops when she hits tier 3. At least you'll have a smaller room for her to eat your troops. Makes it easier for you to hold on to the objectives that you had at the back while she goes out to take the enemy's objectives. Is this really a nerf? I think it is. But it's not a significant nerf. I think it's more... It's helpful in both ways. Because the only thing that you're going to send up with her in the first place is something like the Bone Golems, who can eat those 4 wounds that she's going to drain from them. If you bring up, I don't know, like Legionnaires, if they've somehow survived up till the end game and she's eating souls, they don't really matter. Because she's going to replace them very soon. Tier 3, now this is where that wording is very important. In the previous version, between tier 2 and tier 3, there was always the wording in addition to the previous tier's benefits, or in addition to tier 2's benefits, they have this. However, with the Fallen Pantheon, specifically on tier 3, the wording there is not including that clause that I just presented. Tier 4 of Dark Power Tool says, in addition to the tier 3 benefits, in tier 3 of the Pantheon, Fallen Pantheon buffs, we don't read that, which means that the Fallen Divinity, the Fall Divinity, will only give her allies 2 attacks per stand. That's still good, but it is such a downer when you consider that she gave Fury 3 maximum, because it added her tier 2, which is Fury 1, with her tier 3, which was Fury plus 2. It's a downer, but is it that bad? Not really. When she hits tier 3 and you're like, it's a bonus, that's all it is. The interesting thing about the wording is that when you activate, the interesting thing with the wording is that in the previous version, it had to be half of your stands of the regiment. If half of the stands of your regiment are within her bubble of 14 inches, you were given Dauntless and you were given the plus 2 attacks. Now it's just so long as you're within that 10-inch bubble of hers, it gives you those buffs. But the thing is, once you leave that bubble, you don't gain that buff. The trade-off is, if you are within that bubble, you get eaten, but you take 4 wounds. So there's a give and take there. It's fairer. It's more fair, because previously you could just start inside her bubble, and if you somehow leave it, you still gain those bonuses until the end of that regiment's activation. But now it's more fair. Would it change anything? Change her in the meta? Not really. I think she stays the same. Everyone who likes her will be using her. Anyone who doesn't like her won't be using her. There's no in between. You're either a narrative player who likes fun, or you're a meta player who has some kind of genius plan on how to make this Fall Divinity useful. Things about the Supremacy ability: Celiac remains the same, gives the extra clash, very nice. Strategos remains the same. The only difference, well, actually, there's one big difference. Strategos, Glimmers of a Golden Age. It used to be that the moment you hit tier 3 on the Dark Powers pool, he also gives an army-wide buff, which is essentially Centurion, a free reform, whether out of combat or in combat. It was like weirdly worded. On this army list, it's actually much simpler. It just straight up says you guys gain a free reform or combat reform during that activation. The moment you activate Glimmers, you guys can just do it. Nice. Thank you. There's no weird gatekeeping at tier 3, which is really weird, honestly. So I'm just happy to see that it's there. I don't have to think about it, because anytime I had Glimmers of the Golden Age, the one thing I'm thinking about is, okay, how am I going to activate this so that I can do my free reform? And then by the end of the round, I'm like, I'm nearly at a tier 3. Why in the world did I have to worry about this? So good thing Glimmers of the Golden Age is a thing you could just activate without having to think about this reform thing. It's just there. It's an additional thing. You don't have to think about the gatekeeping of tier 3. Thank you so much. So helpful. Archimandrite. Scholars of the Profane, it's exactly the same. You guys gotta keep in mind too, spellcasting has changed. You need at least 2 successes in order for your spellcasting to go off. And apparently scaling remains the same, so if you want to cast a spell affecting 5 stands, like a 5-stand regiment, then you'll need 3 successes. Some characters, like the Theist Priest, I hope they get a change, an update, because Theist Priest cast 4. The Theist Priest was a Priest 4, so like, if you're trying to get 2 successes at the minimum for Heavenly Blessing, which is a really good spell, if you want to cast that spell, you're going to need at least 3 successes, and that you're rolling 4 dice. He doesn't even get, at least in 1.5.1, he didn't have Devout, so that means that you have to roll out of your 4 dice 3 successes. That's not likely to happen, because you're rolling for 3s and under. You're hoping for 50% each die. Going to the fallen divinity, surrounded by fear and dead men. I love the reference. I even made like a... If you guys know the song Stronger Than You but from Steven Universe, I made a fan song based on the fallen divinity and this ability, surrounded by fear and dead men. I don't think I'll share it here, but I might sometime in the future. Maybe put it in the description or something. I'll comment on my own video and have the lyrics. Maybe that's what I'll do. Let's see. Nothing different with the fallen divinity. I'm glad that they managed to clarify that she is unaffected by the dark power pool though. That's very helpful. I'm not sure why people thought that she could be affected by it because she's specifically fallen pantheon, like the game changes because of her. But I mean, the clarification is always nice. Looking at the characters, oh my gosh, the Ziliarch is amazing. Incredible change. I think Ziliarch was like 80 points, 70 something. He was always expensive compared to the Strategos. But the Ziliarch has moved up, my friends, moved up from 2 Clash to 3. What a change. Incredible. Suddenly our duelist is reliable. I don't know about you guys, but Clash 2 on this amazing duelist at 5 attacks, Clash 2 was like, what, you're expecting 2 or 3 hits maximum? 3 was like pushing it for Ziliarch, unless you have Gladiator. Gladiator made it more reliable, but Gladiator is like, Gladiator didn't really affect duels too much. It was Eleuthera, yeah. Eleuthera, Giver of Mercy, that was really the duelist item. But usually would give Ziliarch Gladiator because you want him to be a melee blender against enemy regiments. He was, if you guys have ever played Total War Rome 2, the Ziliarch is exactly like the champion of Rome or whatever you call that guy. You just send him out and just harry the enemy. This is what this guy is now. He has 3 Clash, 5 attacks, which he's always had, and 5 wounds. Did he always have that? I'm going to say no. I think he had 4 wounds. Okay, let's just say yes actually. He had 5 attacks, 5 wounds. Yeah. His resolve is, of course, he's on animated vessel. It doesn't matter. Defense 2 and evasion 1. Mostly the same. Biggest changes that Clash 3. Incredible. I love it. Animated vessel, cleave 1. Oh, okay. Later on, there's going to be a buff to the Ziliarch that makes him even better. It's called Combat Tier 3. No longer do we have Combat Tier 3 where it's what is it? Clash plus 1 and cleave 1. Now it's Clash plus 1 and cleave plus 1. So this guy, he can go for a full Combat Tier 3 and you don't have to feel bad about it. Now you feel good that he can do everything from being a melee blender to being an assassin. This guy is amazing. I don't know if I'll ever take him as a general, but he is amazing. Anything different here? Was the Prodromoy ever in his list? I think so. Never mind. Regalia and combat. Oh, the Regalia of Dominion is another big change later on. The command stand gains 2 attack or something, which is ridiculous because he and the command stand will be the last stands of the regiment. And if they have a guaranteed 2 more attack every single round, you're looking at, well, I mean, you're guaranteeing 1 or 2 more wounds because of the clash and also the resolve bombing. Strategos, this guy, he's gotten more expensive. I think it was like 60. This is the foot Strategos. He was like 60 points or something. He's always been Clash 3. He's always been Attack 4. His wounds, was it always 5? For some reason, I feel like he had 4 wounds. Either way, he's always been tanky. I mean, it's difficult enough to kill a character between, like, let's say the Nords versus 100 Kingdoms. If you duel each other, okay, not talking about the Cunning Junger. The Cunning Junger is a monster, if on a duel. But like, let's say, what's that Nord captain dude? Jarl, I think a Jarl, yeah. Okay, so a Jarl versus a Noble Lord, if they dueled, there's a good chance that they won't kill each other. There'll be like 1 wound left because they each had 4 wounds. But with something like a Strategos, because he doesn't even have to take resolve, 5 wounds is a lot. This guy will survive, and there's a good chance, because he has defense 2 plus shield, there's a good chance that he'll actually survive 2 rounds of duels. The good thing about this is that every character in the Old Dominion needs to survive. They are buff machines. Old Dominion, the way you play them, you focus on the army. The characters are buffs. Except for the Ziliarch. The Ziliarch is also a monster. But every character is essentially a buff machine. And them being able to survive duels by having more wounds and not having to take resolve is so important. Because you don't want to break. If you're broken, goodbye. Goodbye. You've lost that character, you've lost that regiment. The moment you refuse a duel, you have to be more than willing to risk the fact that you're going to lose that match. Back to what I was saying though, Athanatoi, Prodromoi. I always wonder, why can't I get for my legions the Kerikes, the Centaur Kerikes? Cool that we have Prodromoi, you know, the light cavalry. Very nice. I mean, applause. But can I please get archers? Can I get some range support in my legion? Mounted Strategos. This guy... Okay, initially I have him... I thought at first, okay, Cataphractoi with Mounted Strategos, that's like the thematic regiment to embed him in. But I've recently tried... It was... Yeah, at the very last of 1.5.1, I tried Mounted Strategos on Centaur Prodromoi. And it was amazing. Centaur Prodromoi with the Strategos, and you give him Scoffdung. You guys do a lot. You guys do so much early game. Like all of a sudden the weakness of Old Dominion, which is that they lack early game presence, was turned around because you had a mobile charging unit. Like things like the Spires, Vanguard Infiltrator clones, they fear anything that can do that. Mounted Strategos plus Centaur Prodromoi, amazing combo. But now that the Strategos, the Equus Strategos is what I call it, you know, Mounted Strategos. The Equus Strategos is now at movement 7, which means never put him on Centaur Prodromoi because the Centaurs need to fly. He's stuck with Cataphractoi. Now I just hope that the Cataphractoi are good on this list. Otherwise I won't be very happy with this because my narrative army requires the Equus Strategoi. Anyway, he's got 3 clash, that's normal. 5 attacks, normal. 6 wounds. 6 wounds for 100 points? Fair. I'd say fair. Because he also has defense 3 now. Defense 3 plus shield. So this guy is a duelist. Again, amazing. It doesn't take away from him. He and the Ziliarch, the 2 representatives for the legions, are in my book amazing. For their points, for what they can do, and the things they can bring, especially the treasures. They are worth it. They are very worth it. Worthy characters, my friends. Mainstays, Athanatoi, everything that the foot Strategos had. No retinues, of course. Some blessings. Cool. Wait, was there anything different? Brutal Impact 2. Okay, so Impact 2. It used to be that you could take the Calasaurs, or what's it called? The Blade of the Calasaur? Calamitas, yeah. You used to be able to take Calamitas and equip him with the Blade of the Calasaur. Yeah, you used to be able to give him Calamitas and then he would have 5 attacks. The 5 attacks, of course, would be divided by 2, rounded up, so you'd have 3 impact hits. Now, because of the new rules, Impact 2. So that means this guy, this stand, will only do 2 impact attacks when he crashes in. Can this change? No, it's stuck now. Unless you have some kind of like rule, I guess, that does impact plus something. But for now, no matter how many times he increases attack, he will only have impact 2. I'm not sure what to think about that. I'm gonna have to... Well, okay. The Cataphractoi, they better have good memories of old now. Because this impact 2 is little for a cavalry hero. Brutal Impact remains the same. Hyro Deacon. No change. I think maybe the Hyro Deacon had Clash 2? It doesn't matter, the Hyro Deacon was never going to be a combatant anyway. You wanted him or her. I always had my Hyro Deacons as female. But anyway, I'll call her she. The Hyro Deacon is someone you just keep at the corner of the battlefield casting Dark Supplication. Hazlia, please help me. Hopefully she survives long enough. 5 rounds, I'd say. 5 rounds is when she's paid off her points. If she spent 5 rounds praying, and with Blasphemous Soma in particular, then it was worth it, because she is such a great accelerator for this army. Dark Shepherd hasn't really changed. Treasures, no. Okay, well, the spells thing. So the new change in spellcasting as well. Spellcasters now know every one of their spells. There is no need to buy spells except for 100 Kingdoms, you know, those schools. School of Air, Water, Earth, and Fire. You still have to buy into one of the schools. Oh, actually, I don't know if you even have to buy those anymore. You just choose a school, and your mage would just have those spells, which would be pretty cool. It means that you don't have to think about it, because it used to be that School of Water is 55 points. I'm sorry, I digress. Your spellcasters no longer need to buy their own individual spells. They each know them now. You just choose a spell on that list and you cast it. And then next round you can just cast another spell from the list. Doesn't matter. You can just so long as you have that character, they know all of their spells now. I like the Hierodeacon. I like that they bring the Cento Kerikes, but it's just so weird mixing the faiths with the legions. I wish I could just build a pure legion list and actually have archers. But anyway, yep. The Hashashin are going to be very interesting. I really want to see how they play out, and I want to read how their new rules look like. On one hand, I'm like, they looked promising in the previous version. On the other hand, they're mortal. So I don't know how useful they really will be. They've always had only Arcane as a retinue. And their Dark Blessing is Arcane. Okay. Archimandrite, no changes here. Why does he have Volley 1? Why does the Archimandrite have Volley 1 when there is no Barrage? Every other character that we've seen thus far has Volley 0 because they have absolutely no Barrage. So I'm looking at this and I thought, okay, does that mean that Old Dominion has an item that allows them to shoot? Like the Kiss Farewell of the 100 Kingdoms? Nope, there is no item, there is no mastery, nothing. Oh, excuse me, Dark Blessing, not mastery. There's nothing on the Old Dominion that allows this guy to actually shoot, which means, I don't know why there's that one volley. It's a typo. Just consider it a typo. 3 attacks, 4 wounds. Decent. The same as the Hierodeacon, just better spellcaster with Priest 6. Incredible. May have up to 2 Dark Blessings. Awesome. Has all these. Oh, okay, so they changed it. I mentioned earlier to the Old Dominion factions talk, to me Discord, that there was a typo with the Archimandrite still having, you have to choose one of the spells. But now it's just, they know all of the following spells at no additional points cost. So this is a good update. That's great. I'm glad that I mentioned it. Nothing else here. Cultists, Keres, and Legionnaires, Bone Golems, Moroi, Praetorian Guard, Profane Sepulchre. Okay, so this is one of the issues I had, one of the things that worried me. Regalia of Dominion. So, have you guys ever tried this? Archimandrite with 1 tier of Regalia of Dominion, and then pick up Sanctified Labaron, the banner, the most expensive banner in the list of the previous version. With that, you could pick up a Profane Sepulchre and 2 Bone Golems, and he'd of course be stuck with the Legionnaires as the mainstay. That is a really strong starter. But of course, the Profane Sepulchre is not yet released, so if you didn't want that, you can just go for 1 Legionnaires, and then with the Sanctified Labaron, pick up 3 Bone Golems. It was a very strong way of maximizing your regiment's strength, warband strength, while paying for very little. But now I think they just want to focus on having Calistine Scion as the method for which your Archimandrite can pick up and equip Regalia of Dominion abilities. So yeah, you'll have to pick up Calistine Scion in order to get Regalia of Dominion, in order to get Sanctified Labaron, if they haven't changed Calistine Scion. Fallen Divinity, nothing really changed. Except for her attacks. I think initially at tier 1 she had 6 attacks. I still don't know why she has volley 2, volley 3, volley 4. She doesn't shoot. She has no barrage. And there are no masteries or items that you can pick up for it. So I wish they'd change that. But whatever. She has 8 attacks now at the start, which is pretty cool. Starting off with 10 wounds. Did she start off with 10? I think she did. Nothing much. Hardened 1, impact 4. Okay, at tier 3, this is a little bit of a change. At tier 3, she has hardened 2 first off. I think in previous versions she just remained at hardened 1. This is pretty cool. Defense 4 is very solid, very reliable. However, she has 12 attacks as her characteristics, but her impact has been reduced to just impact 5. It should be impact 6, but impact 5 means that she's still weaker on the charge. That means that, okay, it used to be that you could just charge into the enemy and wipe them out thanks to your impact hits plus resolve. There was a good chance you could just wipe them out if they're minimum sized. But now you have to rely on clash. Is that a good change? It means that the Fallen Divinity at tier 3, which is probably something you'll get at what, round 7, round 8, round 9, round 10. You'll have 4 rounds. You'll have 4 rounds of a monster on your list. You got to think about whether or not that's going to be worth it. If you bring a Hyrule Deacon, you might be able to get it down to... She might reach tier 3 by round 5, hopefully. That means you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll have 6 rounds maximum of being a monster. That would be worth it. Between 6 to 5 rounds would be worth it, but I'm not sure about 4 rounds anymore. Font of Dark Power remains the same. Oh, okay, big buff. One of the biggest, best buffs for the Fallen Divinity. I'm so happy to see that she has no restricted options, guys. Man, I was saying on the chat, it would be great if she could at least count herself as mainstay. That way we can bring something like the Canifors or Caryatids, the official, you know, Fallen the Divinity, the Pantheon list. Just the statues, the female statues. It would be awesome if we just had those guys to come with her. But they were restricted. Now we could take them without issue. Thank goodness. Canifors and Caryatids are just so cool. Honestly, I prefer the Caryatids because at least they'll be able to shoot over her head and hit target. But Canifors are really cool too as bodyguards, because you are not bringing the Fallen Divinity out until round 3. You're going to use that flank and keep her as far back as possible until she's ready to, until she's seen where the enemy has gathered, and then you can decide whether or not you want to deploy her as a Death Star once you reach tier 2, or if you want to deploy her on the safe side of things and guarantee... No, you want her to be a Death Star. If you play safe with her, then you're going to lose, because she's worth so much and your army is based around her. They can't build Dark Power, so they won't be able to stand up against the enemy. Dark Blessings, it's the same. Tactical and combat. Yeah, she didn't have Arcane. Character upgrades, I liked how they have these specific things. These specific things about Old Dominion now. I don't know if it's different. So things like priests and wizards only not being able to take armor. Would that just be a specific Old Dominion thing? I know in every army they had it, but because it's been bulleted like this, it makes me wonder, does every army have different restrictions at this point? If so, that'd be pretty cool. I mean, I'd love to see Sorcerer Kings, which is going to be the next faction based on votes. I'd love to see their people, their mages, be able to wear armor, because they're going to have so many mages as characters. Or are these spellcasters? Treasures the Old Dominion. Sanctified Lebaron stays the same. Celestine Banner stays the same. I think they just simplified the wording. Always count as having the inspired special rule. That's very important because the rules now state that things like Dread, which denies the enemy of Inspire, Dread no longer applies to things that have the specific wording always be counted as inspired. So if the enemy 100 Kingdoms, let's say, they have a Count Palatine, or they have Dauntless active because of the Noble Lord plus Household Guard plus Regalia of the Empire, yeah. If they have the Regalia of the Empire, the Household Guard is considered Dauntless. At that point, this ability, the Dread ability, would never be able to actually reduce their Inspired. Same thing over here. This is good against other Old Dominion, I guess. Vexilla of the Lost. The regiment gains the flank. It's okay. 30 points? Not worth it, I think. What do you guys think? Does anyone bring this? What kind of regiment? Maybe with the Ziliach. Ziliach plus a Thanatoi, because the Thanatoi have, at least traditionally, they've been kind of squishy. So them having flank means that you can definitely deploy them further up. Legio 1 Primigenia. This has a nerf. For 20 points. Okay, well actually for 20 points maybe this makes sense. But rather than getting Aura of Death +1 for your regiment, it's only... Excuse me, instead of getting Aura of Death +2, now it's only Aura of Death +1. The thing is, thematically... Let me take a sip first. Okay, sorry. Thematically, the First Legion, the Firstborn, Primigenia means Firstborn. The First Legion should be freaking amazing. Because they're the only retired Legion. The 4 Lost Legions sent north, lore-wise, for those of you guys who don't know. The Old Dominion had a total of less than 20 legions in their entire lifespan of the Dominion. They had less than 20 legions, which makes sense. I mean, if you compare it to our world, our real world version of the Old Dominion, which was the Roman Empire, spanned 3 epochs pretty much: the Republic, the Empire, and the Byzantine Empire. But in those 3 epochs, there was a time when there were over 50 legions active during the pre-Republic, I think. During the Republic, reaching the Empire. They had over 50 legions, and then this one dude reduced it by half, and they had like 25 legions maximum at one point. In the world of Aya, with the Old Dominion, them having less than 20 for conquering like the eastern side of the main continent, I think it's called Surtr. Surtr. For them having less than 20 legions and conquering that much makes a lot of sense. Now, does it make sense for the Legendary Legion, the only one to have been retired? Like, yeah, because the First Legion was never active after a certain point in time. Would it make sense for them to have Aura of Death +1? No, I don't think so. For all the legend that they have, this should be Aura of Death +2 at the minimum. But looking at the points, 20 points, I guess in terms of gaming mechanics, sure. Like honestly, I keep thinking about this. Legio 1 Primigenia. Why does it get Aura of Death +1 when the Theist Priest of the 100 Kingdoms, the Theist Priest can get a mastery called Death Cult, which gives them Aura of Death 1 for like 15 points. I'm like, is a Death Cult as powerful as this banner that's lived on for centuries and has gathered this legend? I don't think so. But I mean, that's just me as a lore nut. Semyon of the Legion, it has the untouchable rule, always good. I'm happy to see that they dropped it to 20 points actually. It used to be 30. Pardon, I was burping. It used to be 30 points, but it's dropped down to 20. For Untouchable, that is a good deal. Untouchable means that the enemy has no supporting attacks against the regiment that has Untouchable. That's excellent, that's great. You want this on your frontliners, like if you had a Death Star of Legionnaires, pit them against whatever, and that whatever will never be able to use their supporting attacks. It's awesome. Good stuff, while you still have yours. Big change on the Kuras of Hazlia's Shadow. For 30 points, you get +1 evasion for the regiment and the character. What can I say? This is incredible. Incredible. Think of this combo. The Ziliarch. He has 2 defense and 1 evasion. With this on, he has 2 evasion, which means that the 2 defense is moot. Who cares? He has a decent chance of dodging the enemy's attacks. Unless the enemy has smite, which I still don't fully understand. Like, does smite get rid of the defense characteristic? Is the defense characteristic considered 0 for the attack? Or is it specifically the defense roll, including evasion? But anyway, I digress. Hazlia's Shadow now grants +1 evasion. It lost its 10-inch obscure aura, but I think this is a good trade-off. This turns the upcoming Athanatoi into something extremely dangerous, especially when you put in your Ziliarch with them. The Immortals, which is what Athanatoi mean apparently, the Immortals are now technically immortal because they can and they will dodge, as well as the Vanguard clone infiltrators, and they will destroy them in combat. Thank goodness. I want to see it happen. I want to see small statistics of how Athanatoi would go up against a regiment of Vanguard clone infiltrators, if they have, of course, the Kurias of Hazlia's Shadow. But I think that might be unfair because the Ziliarch is amazing now. Anyway, Aventine Armor, rather than having Hardened 1, we have Tenacious. Is that a good trade-off? Aventine Armor, 25 points. Tenacious. Actually, I think it might be. You don't give Aventine Armor to everything. You give it only to someone who's going to Praetorian Guard, or even the Cataphractory. Those were essentially the only 2 regiments that you would ever get Aventine Armor on. But now that it gives Tenacious, it adds up more options. For example, I can see Aventine Armor on Varangian Guard. All of a sudden, your Varangian Guard are much harder to kill, because they're guaranteed to have at least 1 stand surviving. Next up, we have Armor of the Living Saints, Blessed, and Quick Strike. This is an upgrade, and I can't believe it stayed at 20 points. I don't know about you guys, but I used Armor of the Living Saint often, specifically with my Ziliarch, because Blessed is so good. Blessed with Duel, I mean, like, back then he had Clash 2, which means that he was not very reliable on the duel, because he needs that Inspire. But anyway, now with Armor of Dominion back then, he could actually be reliable on both the offense and defense. But with Quicksilver added on to Armor of the Living Saint, Quicksilver Strike, if you guys don't know, allows the duelist to strike first. So let's say you give it to a Ziliarch. He's rolling, if you give him all the buffs, he's got like 7 attacks and 6 wounds. Let's say he's attacking 7 times, has Blessed, has Cleave 2, and Clash 4 because of Combat Tier 3, and Quicksilver Strike. This guy might be able, and let's say he's got Gladiator as well. Yeah, let's say he's got Gladiator. He's hitting on 4s with Cleave 2, Blessed, so you're rerolling every fail if on the offense, because you're not going to use it on defense. Probably has Hazlia's Shadow as well, so he has Evasion 2. Quick Strike. He can kill a Konungjunker. He will kill a Konungjunker, now that I think about it. Especially that Konungjunker hits roll 6s on the defense roll. Oh my gosh. This guy has become... If you want to give anyone Armor of the Living Saint, they become your like primary assassin. They become incredible in the duel. Give this to your assassin. Give it to your Ziliarch. Maybe even your Strategos. If you want a really good duelist, like one who engages the enemy, give it to your mounted Strategos. I could definitely see this working with the Quicksilver Strike, because he's, cavalry. Just crash into the enemy, challenge the enemy to a duel, beat them, or if they refuse, then you still have Cataphractory. And Cataphractory, honestly, in my opinion, they are not charge infantry, they are shock infantry, which means that they're just there to enter the battle, get stuck in, and fight it out. Hopefully that's what they did here. I haven't looked at them yet. Imperial Oplon, another amazing item. Every one of these armors in the Old Dominion are just winners. Every single one. I don't see a single loser here. All of them are good. The Imperial Oplon, it used to be that the character stand counts as one more stand, which means that, let's say you put them in a minimum size. Talking about Cataphractor, usually bring the minimum size of them. So 3 stands of 1 regiment of Cataphractor. Plus your character. That would be 4 stands. 4 on an objective ain't bad, but it's definitely nowhere near what you need in order to hold on to an objective. But with the Imperial Oplon now, just your single character, just one guy, now counts as 3. 3 stands on this one objective. If ever you want to make Cataphractor helpful by charging into the enemy and stealing the enemy's objective, Imperial Oplon is your man. Oh my gosh, I can see it now. So imagine Mounted Strategos, he counts as 3 guys now on the objective. Plus the 3 other Cataphractor if they're still fresh. That's 6. You're looking at what most bulky regiments would look like. 6 stands on the enemy's far objective. That is more than enough to steal that objective back. To steal that objective from the enemy, or at least make it so they have to worry about their objective getting stolen. Back then, like if you had just 4 stands, who cares? 5 stands, maybe a little bit worrying. 6 stands, that's good. That's really good. Let's see, weapons. Anastegma, it's the same. I don't know why it's 30 points. It really shouldn't be worth that much. Is it? Okay, the way I see it, right? What can you do with Anastegma? You could rush tier 4. If you can rush the tier 4, Anastegma is worth it because you're dealing 2 wounds, 2 resolve tests per wound. If you can do that, then you have a good chance of landing those 6s on the enemy's resolve test, which means double the damage on the resolve. So basically, from what I could tell, right, meta list building, Anastegma is you trying to build an army that gets to tier 4 very fast. But is it worth it? Unless you're building up to that kind of meta, then it's not, in my opinion. And what would you even bring? Like, what kind of army would you bring for that? On Hierodeacon, the Strategos, I don't think it would be a mounted in this case. Maybe it would, because at least in the impact you also get to do resolve tests. Who knows? On to Skofnung. Skofnung, I like how it specializes. It specifically writes down the regiment that the character stand is currently attached to gains the Linebreaker special rule. So it used to be that we had Linebreaker 1. I'm gonna have to look up what Linebreaker is now. Like, I don't think it has a number anymore. If it doesn't have a number, that's good, because Linebreaker itself, it didn't really make sense for it. Like, no one ever had Bastion +2. Linebreaker by itself is specifically, it ignores Shield and Bastion 1. That's good. Both of them at the same time. So like having Linebreaker 1 breaks 2 methods for which the enemy gains defense. Now, like, it doesn't make sense to me, at least, to have Linebreaker 2 or any number after Linebreaker. I'm just glad to have it as is, because no one ever has Bastion +2 as far as I know. So that's good. It's fine. Character gains Cleave +1. That's standard. Calamitas is next. Add +1 to the attack's characteristic and gain +1. Awesome. Very good. Like, just overall. Calamitas increased in points. I'm pretty sure Calamitas was 15. Now it's 20. Skofnung remains 25. Anastegma remains 30. Eleuthera remains at 10. This is the duelist item. Character gains +1 to its clash. Okay, so another thing, guys. We're talking about the Ziliach duelist, the assassin. Well, Eleuthera plus the Ziliach now means that you've got yourself a clash 5. Let's see, Ziliach starts off with clash 3. You put him up to combat tier 3, which makes him clash 4. You give him Eleuthera, and all of a sudden he's clash 5. And if you somehow give him Inspire, like let's say he's with Athanatoi, which also have a Principess, so you can just go ahead and use the Inspire action. But anyway, back to what I was saying. If you get Inspire on your Ziliarch somehow, at Clash 5, he will have Relentless Blows. So your rolls of 1 on his attacks will automatically do 2 attacks each. With the amount of damage he can do, oh my gosh. I need to do the calculations, but you guys can imagine. Eleuthera with the Ziliarch is very cool. Eleuthera with the Strategos is also very cool. I cannot stress that much. I know I'm talking a lot about the Ziliarch, but the Strategos is still my favorite character. I'm just talking about the Ziliarch a lot because everyone knows him as our blender. Strategos is more of our general, you know. Blasphemous Soma, no change. No change. Unholy Sacrament, no change. Yeah, I think the points are the same as well. Consecrated Meter is the same. No one picks up the Reaping Crook. I don't know who would pick that up. What could you do with the Reaping Crook? I can't even think about it in terms of meta. But anyway, Regalia. We're looking at the characters and retinues now. Regalia has changed significantly, at least Tier 1. Tier 1 now grants +2 to the attacks characteristic of the command stand. So the command stand is the one that has the leader. Like if you have an infantry stand, it would be the leader, standard bearer, and other officers. That's the command stand. That stand in particular has +2 to the attack characteristics, which means that if you're smart, if you're engaging the enemy almost like 95% of the time, you would have +2 to your attacks. That's a little bit of a math to keep, but it's not that hard at all. It's not, well, it's definitely better than what we previously had. In the previous version, what we used to have with the Regalia Tier 1 is reroll X number of dice equal to the tier that you have on Regalia for your attacks. So it was basically trying to catch your failed dice. But with +2 to your attacks at Tier 1, that's a really good one. You don't need to build up more Regalia. Tier 1 is really good. Tier 2 just gives your characters on the battlefield Regeneration 1 draw event. That's okay. I mean, let's say you have a Strategos and someone else has... let's say you have a Strategos with Regalia Tier 2. With the changes to Turn the Tides, there's a good chance that you might just go Turn the Tide rather than the heal. But I mean, I guess it's nice. Yeah. It's nothing really, but I guess it's nice. I'm really happy to see this though. So, Regalia Tier 3. It used to cost 30 points to get this. But now, Tier 3 has been greatly reduced to 10 points. If you have Tier 3, the characters stand on the battlefield. You may modify all your reinforcement roll value by +1. That means that your army is getting exactly what the Imperial Officer of the 100 Kingdoms does, which is you guys get to the battlefield and you guys can organize so much faster. I love it that it's 10 points now. It was so much. It really felt bad taking it for 30 points back in the previous version. 10 points? Excellent. Thank you so much. I will take Regalia of the Dominion Tier 3 for my Strategos a good amount of times now. Combat is still the same, +1 to wounds for the first tier, +1 to the attacks for the second tier. But I think combat got more expensive. I'm pretty sure it got more expensive. I think it was 20 points. Maybe. Tier 3 combat is +1 to your clash characteristic and cleave +1 to the special rules. Really good buff. For 35 points, it's expensive. It's very expensive. I don't know. Like, this better net you at least 2 to 3 stands, depending on what stands you're killing. This better net you 2 to 3 stands with whatever's got this. Otherwise, it's not worth it. Arcane, no difference. Except for the second tier, which is... It used to be that on Tier 2, for Arcane, 1, the character would get blessed, and 2, they would reduce the scaling by 1. That means that you would reduce the stands by 3. So if you're casting like a regiment buff, and you had 6 stands in that regiment, you would be casting as if the regiment had 3. Now it's down to just 2 stands. So if you had the same example, a regiment of 6, which already includes the character, and they're casting a self buff, you would be counting the entire regiment as 4 stands, which just means 1 extra success on the die roll. So you'd need a total of 3. It's not as good. Honestly, it's not that. Is it worth it for 20 points? Not really. Honestly, it's not really that worth it. I'd say 10 points. They don't even get blessed anymore, so it's definitely not worth it. Tier 3, this character stand always treats off 1 failed spellcasting die as a success. That's pretty much what it... No, so this is a big change. In Arcane 3, back in 1.5.1, you automatically have 1 successful die. It doesn't say where that die comes from, it just says you have 1 automatic spellcasting thing. So that means most people would just go, I'll roll my dice, but I always have that 1 success outside of my dice roll. And that's a decent interpretation of it, but this time it just clarifies it's 1 failed spellcasting die that becomes a successful one. So you can't just come out with like 7 dice out of nowhere. It's got to be 6 dice, 1 of them becomes a success. Okay, Dark Blessings, Kentark. Okay, so what I wish they would do with Kentark, the one thing I would criticize it for, it's still pretty much the same, guys. Kentark is the same. You get the 8 inches. No, actually this changed. Wait a minute. Kentark used to give Dauntless. This is a big change, actually. This is not a good change. Okay, Kentark. It used to be that it gives you Dauntless for all regiments within 8 inches of the character stand. But now it only gives always counts as inspired. That is a big change because Dauntless means that the regiment cannot be broken. And broken now is pretty big. So that change for 40 points, not worth it. Very not worth it. Or at least it's very risky. And what's more guys? Very important thing over here is the wording. Does it mean that the moment you hit tier 2, everything around you within 8 inches is guaranteed that inspired special rule? Like, do they just get this like passive buff even if they move away from the character stand? Or do they have to remain? Like, is it an aura around this character? Or is it this like burst of passive aura for that for that moment that you reach tier 2? It's just like the sudden burst of passive ability that everyone within that aura at that time gain and permanently have forever, kind of thing, even if they move away from the character. It's still that kind of like confirmation that I'd like to know, but for now what you should interpret it is a moving aura with the character stand. So long as the friendly regiment is within 8 inches of that character stand, count it as always inspired. But the moment they move away, even just 1 millimeter away from the very edge of that aura, then they do not have the inspired rule. Anyway, is it worth it? I don't think it's worth it for 40 points. Again, it's gonna be very risky. Dauntless was worth it. Just always being inspired. Can you wait until tier 3? Probably. Yeah, I don't know why anyone would bring this, because if you have a Strategos, then you could just activate your Glimmers and you'd have Kentark for an entire round, and that's all you need, honestly. But if you're the Zilliarch, maybe. If you want a Zilliarch that's more regiment based rather than being a hero all by himself. Aura of Malice stays the same. It's bad for a normal character, it's great for a fallen divinity. Eternal Discipline with the Untouchable stays the same. We have a new tactical option, which is Long Lineage. It's funny because the 100 Kingdoms also has this, and I was making a joke. Look, if we have Long Lineage on, if we have Long Lineage for Old Dominion now, then for 100 Kingdoms it should be changed. Rather than being called Long Lineage, it should be called Even Longer Lineage. Porphyrogenitus is bodyguard special rule. Why would you take this? Why would anyone take this? Yeah, I'm not sure why anyone would take this. Not the... It could be good on the Archimandrite, but the Archimandrite can't pick up tactical. Archimandrite only has access to dark blessings that are from the arcane. So this doesn't make sense. I don't know why anyone would bring this. You could use it on your Strategos, but is it worth it? No. Again, the only reason why you would say no to a duel is if you want to lose. Your character should be tanky enough to survive duels. Except if you're going up against a Cunning Younger, then you might want to consider canceling the duel. Because that guy is... he has ways to chop off your head. Anyway, combat. This is such a cool name for this combat mastery. What we did in life will echo in eternity. And I love the ability. Let me read it for you. Requires combat retinue tier 3. When an enemy character's stand refuses to participate in a duel with his character stand, the regiment is attached. The regiment is attached to reroll. The regiment it is attached to. That's how it should be worded. So back from the beginning. When an enemy character stand refuses to participate in a duel with this character stand, the regiment it is attached to rerolls successful morale tests until the end of the round, in addition to it becoming broken. And then, second clause. Furthermore, the regiment this character stand is currently attached to, talking about the enemy regiment stand. Oh, actually, furthermore, the regiment this character stand is currently attached to, so talking about our ally, is currently attached to gains the flurry special rule when performing a clash against a broken regiment. So, what this ability does, first off, it specifies, it's really good for breaking the enemy. Wait a minute. What we did, so what you want to do with this ability, you want to, if possible, you guys have to be engaged on the enemy already. You have to draw your character card with this ability, with this combat blessing. You have to declare a duel. If the enemy refuses, then until the end of that round, the enemy has to re-roll successful morale tests, as if you've been flanking the enemy, which is cool. Very cool. But you have to make sure that you're drawing your character card first. If you try to do something like turn the tide, all of a sudden it doesn't work. You have to use it, and then I guess, yeah, you have to use your action first to declare a duel. The enemy has to refuse, and then during the entire match, that enemy regiment will re-roll all of their successful morale tests. Great for bravery bombing the enemy. But the second part is very important. Gain flurry when performing a clash against a broken regiment. It's very niche, but if you have, like, whoever you give this ability to, what we did in life will echo in eternity, whoever gains this ability better have a Death Star. Because if they don't have a strong unit that's pushing into the enemy, like just building up that pressure into enemy territory, if you don't have that, then this combat ability is very useless. You need to be in combat as often as possible in order for it to be worth the 25 points. It's honestly still pretty cheap, but it is very niche. So you gotta keep track of that. Gladiator. Same thing, flurry, deadly blades, and parry. No difference. Same points too, I think. 25. Exposed weakness, 20 points. Yep. I think this is different. During a dual action, enemy character stands cannot ignore or reduce the number of hits suffered from this character stand. What? During a dual action, enemy character stands cannot ignore or reduce the number of hits suffered from this character stand. What does that mean? Cannot ignore or reduce the number of hits? Okay, so let's break it down. Let's declare a duel. Strategos declares the duel against Noble Lord. Noble Lord accepts the duel. Okay. Strategos rolls 5 dice, succeeds 3 times. Cannot ignore or reduce the number of hits suffered from this character stand. Strategos successfully rolls 3 hits. Enemy Noble Lord fails all 3 hits. Fails 2 hits, manages to block 1. Does this mean that the one that he blocked still goes through? Ignore or reduce the number of hits suffered from this character stand. What does that mean? Like, does it just mean that the enemy cannot block? Like, cannot... No, that's... They should be able to block, because that is such a core mechanic on duels. There must be some way for the enemy to, like, reduce the number of hits they take during a duel. So this becomes uber niche. Has the duel rules changed? I don't think the TLDR said anything about it. So until something changes, I would not take exposed weakness. What would reduce the number of hits during a duel? I have absolutely no idea. Implacable. This character's stand gains access to break their lines, a combat action. So that means your regiment has to already be in touch with another, so they're in melee. All stands in the regiment this character is attached to gain the line breaker special rule until the end of the round. Okay, so Implacable used to just be the character activates and then use your action as for the character to gain line breaker 1. And this lasted until the end of the activation of the regiment that the character is attached to. Which is a long time. If you like, it could loop around until the next round. But Implacable being until the end of the round just simplifies things. There's nothing else to say about that. It just means that you have to draw your character before you draw your regiment. And that's okay, I guess. It just means that your character will not be a duelist. Or at least you won't be using them to duel. You want to use your character against enemy Death Stars or whatever. Arcane, Unholy Mastery, the same thing. You can cast an extra spell if you have 4 or more successes. Great for Archimandroid because you're rolling 6 dice. Nothing else to say. Oh, they also have Devout now, which means that it's more likely that if you cast a spell, you just automatically gain 1 more success due to Devout. If you're casting a spell of self, like Hazlia's Touch. Let's see. Scamaphore gains the Dark Shepherd draw event. I still don't know why that's there. Why is it so expensive? I dropped it down to 15 points. It's useless. Why would you want to get Dark Shepherd? Viaticum. Destroy a friendly regiment stand. If it breaks if it shatters the enemy, if it shatters your regiment, or if it completely wipes out your regiment, you gain 1 more dark power. It's so niche. Like, honestly, okay, I can see some uses for it. If you really need an accelerator, you should bring this. Like, especially as an accelerator in the sense of, I will kill my own. So the higher you can give them like an MSU plus an icon bearer, so you get +1 to your dark powers. If you just kill off all of your regiment while the Hierodeacon is praying their butt off, and then you use Viaticum to just kill your own regiment with the Hierodeacon in it, you get like +3 additional points straight up. So yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, what else can I say? It's all right. What happened? Sorry, let me just pull it up again. Something happened. Give me my army list. YouTube. What's going on, YouTube? Alright, okay. I'm going to pull it up on just normally rather than through YouTube now. Display capture. Let's go. Oh, sure. Doesn't matter. Sorry for the weird optical illusion here, guys. Okay. So where were we? Spells. Alright. No change. We have Dark Supplication at Attunement 2 still. The range of self means that your Hierodeacon only needs 1 success. Remember, Hierodeacon has Devout, so one of your spellcasting rolls is always going to be a success now. If you I don't know why you would give the Hierodeacon Arcane Tier 3, but that would mean that Dark Supplication will go off without having to roll any dice, because you'll have 2 successes automatically, no matter what. Black Flame Coruscation is still the same, based on the Dark Power pool. No issues. This one is still the same as well, Unholy Baptism, except for the fact that the range changed. Unholy Baptism used to be 14 inches, now it's 12. a slight nerf. It makes it streamlined, but it was really cool to have a 14-inch spell. This means that you can't really use your Archimandrite to hunt down, to just snipe off objectives anymore. That's not a big change, whatever. Blasphemous power, counting the things. Okay, no, there's no change. Blasphemous power still remains the same. You just count the target regiment to have +1 to the dark powers tier, specifically dark powers, and you gain flurry and decay 2 if you reach the final tier and try to cast blasphemous power on them. No change there. The touch remains the same. It's just heal 1 plus X wounds, where the X equals the tier of the dark powers. Immolation is still 8 inches. I wish it was at least 10. Still the same. Limited to Aura of Death 5. And then we're moving on to the units. I don't like how this looks. I kind of wish that after the spells... Oh wait, no. These are the spells for the Keres. Never mind. Keres, Insanity. So the cool thing, right? Why I would bring Keres and why you should bring Keres. The scenarios now include objective markers. And one of the things, one big loophole that is kept as a loophole specifically for the Keres. Let me take a sip, just a moment. Okay. Oops. Okay. So, back to what I was saying. A loophole for the Keres, and something you should keep track of if you want to destroy objective markers at a rapid pace. There are two ways, okay? Two tips I could give you. First, if you have cavalry, charge into the objective and then clash. That gives you 2 wounds immediately. The second tip, which is more towards objectives on your side of the field, Keres. Keres are OP when taking down objective markers. Why? Because of Insanity. Keres with Insanity has 10-inch range. You have to first, okay, if you want to shoot at an objective, you have to be at least 8 inches of it. But let's focus on this Insanity first. Insanity works on objective markers. Objective markers have no resolve. I understand that. It's like the Old Dominion. They have the dash as a resolve. And this is also another thing. Like, I wonder if this should also affect Old Dominion, honestly, based on the wording. But focusing on objective markers. Let's read Insanity. Inflicts 2 hits per success on target enemy regiment. Okay, wait, maybe... No, they count... Objective markers also count as regiments, so this is still fine. That enemy regiment rolls defense rolls using their lowest unmodified resolve characteristic instead of their defense characteristic. This is the wording that needs to be focused on. Wounds caused by the spell do not cause a morale test. Okay, so focusing on what it says. The enemy regiment rolls defense rolls using their lowest unmodified resolve characteristic instead of their defense characteristic. This is so important because the objective markers have a dash on their resolve. They're supposed to count resolve tests as a success, but on the rulebook itself, a resolve test is specifically a characteristic test. Defense rolls are not a characteristic test. Defense rolls, typically you would be using the defense characteristic plus whatever special rules, and that defense roll also includes evasion. So a defense roll in this case, when you cast Insanity on the enemy, specifically an objective, that objective should be rolling its 3 defense, but rather than rolling the 3 defense, it'll be rolling the dash on the resolve, which means it can't roll for that resolve, which means that Insanity automatically works on the objective marker. It was on the chat as well that we asked for confirmation on it, and one of the developers, or maybe it was Riz. Riz is usually the one who's very active on the Discord, did indeed clarify that yes, Insanity does work on objective markers because it targets the defense. It is a defense roll, not a characteristic roll. And specifically on the paper, it says that the objective marker succeeds all resolve tests, and those tests are specifically resolve characteristics. Characteristic test. Now the question I have though is like, would this work on Old Dominion then? Would that mean just guaranteed hits on Old Dominion? Based on the wording, I think so. I would ask that you guys not take my word for it that you can just 100% do this all the time. but based on what I understand and how the wording goes, yes, you can hurt objective markers with this, and it's guaranteed damage. If it's an objective marker, it's still just 1 damage, but I mean, you can fire at them with your volley, plus cast the spell, hoping for at least 1 success on that too, and you're guaranteed to deal 2 wounds on the objective marker. That's really strong. That's really fast. Anyway, moving on. Same thing with the rest of its clauses. If you reach tier 2 and then tier 3 of the insanity spell, no one really keeps the Keres for that long, but I mean, I guess if you keep them that long, you have that thing. Oh, another thing. Yes, Keres now have insanity and drain will built into them. So their cost, I hope they haven't changed their cost, but it should be well worth it now. Drain willed at 12 inches. Within 1 to 4 successes, the enemy's defense characteristic is reduced by 1. Still the same. If it's 4 or more, then the enemy suffers 1 additional hit from any Aura of Death X special rules. Okay, so the thing is, you would think that this is... Actually, I would have to read Aura of Death one more time, because if Aura of Death is said this stand deals a certain amount of hits, then that means that this Drain Will would actually deal 1 hit per stand that has Aura of Death. But if Aura of Death just says this regiment deals a certain amount per stand, then it's just 1 hit. Again, like from what I understand in terms of wording, if Aura of Death is written down, this stand deals a certain amount of hits, then Drain Will do 1 additional hit for each of those stands. However, if Aura of Death specifically says the regiment that has Aura of Death deals X number of attacks based on however many stands they got, then that means that you only deal 1 hit, because it's based on the regiment. The regiment is the one that's dealing the damage, not the stands. The stands count for Aura of Death, but only the regiment is doing the damage. Anyway, Moroi. I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm a rules lawyer, but I want to make sure that we're trying to understand things here. Translocation. No one picks this up. 3 scaling. No one picks this up. This regiment immediately performs a free additional 8 inches. 8 inches. Moroi usually moves 6. Did Moroi March change? Okay, so first off, they can perform 8-inch march now, ignoring everything. It's a teleport. This means that it's possible for Moroi to jump over an enemy regiment that's engaging them. You can finally teleport behind them, you know, like the meme. They'll be able to teleport behind them and do stuff. Is that strong? We'll see. Whilst performing this move, the regiment may move sideways, backwards, without having to have... Yeah. 8 inches. 8 inches. That is a lot. That is a lot of movement. Is it game breaking? No. Well, what can you do with it? Well, I know that... Okay, the issue with the Moroi is that they have to get Wizard 1, they have to activate the Memories of Old. So they're just foot soldiers until tier 2. Tier 2 they can be cool. But tier 1 you're just trying to charge into the enemy and like hopefully beat them down. Immolation gains Aura of Death X. Success divided by 2. It's still the same. This is decent. It's always been decent. Most people bring up to like between 4 to 6 Moroi. So the maximum within that range would just be Aura of Death plus 3. And that's fine. I mean, they have built-in Aura of Death plus 2, unless that has changed. Regiments. 5, 2, 1, 4. They have 4 attacks? Oh, yeah, per stand now. Per stand. Not per model, per stand. 4 wounds. I would honestly thought that they would have 3. Okay. So that means we're... The only unit that I could see that has maybe 3 wounds or 2 wounds for an infantry stand would be Force-Grown Clones. But maybe not even them. Maybe 4 is the very minimum of every single infantry regiment. 1 defense, 1 evasion. These guys are trash, except for the fact that they have lethal demise. If you somehow get these guys against something like Dragon Slayers, I think you'll have a lot of fun. Barrage 3 per stand. Barrage 3 per stand? with Liquid Anathema. Oblivious. Who cares about the Oblivious one? These guys cost 100 points. I think they were cheaper. Is this worth it now? 30 points per stand? Liquid Anathema, let's read it. When an enemy regiment suffers any hit from a volley action performed by this regiment, add 2 to the total hits received from the Aura of Death X special rule until the end of that regiment's next activation. Add 2 to the total hits. Okay, so this one's very specific. If the enemy regiment hit by Liquid Anathema encounters any Aura of Death, at the end of it just add +2 to the number of Aura of Death hits that they were supposed to have. Is that worth it? Not really. Like it's so niche. Plus they have 12 inches. 12 inches is alright. But them being mortal, that's the issue. Someone smarter than me will have to build a list around this being like useful. Other than as a way for you to get your, I don't know, Hierodeacon out early. But then you want to kill off your stands with Dark Shepherd. So I don't know why you would bring him in with Cultist. Assassin. 6 movement, great. Why do they have volley? These guys make sense, but why would assassins have volley? Clash 2, 7 attacks. 7 attacks per stand. Oh my gosh, okay. Okay, now we're talking. 4 wounds, basic, 3 resolve, alright. 3 resolve for 180 points. Okay. That's not good. 1 defense, 2 evasion, alright. Cleveland Vanguard. Did they have Vanguard before? I don't think they had Vanguard. That's cool. Oh wait, they're light now. They used to be medium. Alright, so that's changed things. But 180 points for a light? Number of stands, 3 stands, including a command stand. Does this one say you have command stand? They do. How about Moroi? I'd love to see it later. They can take any one of the following officers, either an apostate or master assassin. I hope the master assassin remains Deadly Blades. 60 stands, 60 points per stand. You only want to bring this as a minimum. 7 attacks per stand. That's nice. 7, 14, 21. You're looking at 22 with the leader. 22 attacks. Plus being able to inspire. That's really good. That is really good. 22. Plus if you have Deadly Blades, there's a good chance you'll be doing what? 9, 8? You'd be doing equal to 2 stands worth of damage every round with these guys. I think they're decent, but 180 points, you're gonna have to do a lot to make up for that, especially if you're light. Yeah, we'll see what we can do with this. Next up, Arqueres. 6 movement, 2 volley. Yeah, these are the mages. 1 clash, 4 attacks, 4 wounds, 0 and 2. Keres having 0 defense is interesting. I mean, it makes sense. They were always meant to be evasion tanks. But then why in the world does the assassin have 1 defense if these guys are meant to be evasion tanks? Same thing with the cultists. Why would they have defense 1 if they already have evasion 1? So I'm not... This makes more sense, but at the same time it doesn't fit what happened with the other guys. Barrage 3. Keres with Barrage 3. 12 inches? Wait, they used to have 16. 12 inches Sure Shot? Sure Shot, if I remember correctly, was you'd be able to shoot over your own allied regiments without Obscured. Did Sure Shot change? Because Obscured no longer... Unless you're still obscured by your allies. In which case, okay, Sure Shot is still fine. They have Devout... They don't have anything that you would need Devout for unless you're casting into them. So yeah, that's fine. Devout is whatever. Priest 1 per stand, awesome. Priest 12? Is it possible to get that high? Oh, okay, wait, yeah. Keres with 6 stands, and then you use your memories of old. All of a sudden you have Priest 12. No. Priest 12. You can't... It would be impossible to become Priest 12. Anyway. 50 per stand. 160 points for all the spells. Okay, it's honestly not bad. But the 12 inches? The 12 inches. All of a sudden... Yeah, okay. Use these guys as objective marker destroyers. That's all I'd say. They're not worth it on combat. Until you reach tier 2, maybe. Cannot be destroyed by character stand. Can use one of its actions to spellcast. Alright. Mostly the same other than the fact that they reduce their range. Moroi. Okay, cool. They have no volley. That's good. To clash, 6 attacks. Okay, now this is a differentiating point. Moroi just used to be better than the Hashashin. But them having 6 attacks now, that could be a differentiating factor. Why does the assassin have 1 defense? Moroi have 0. Fluid formation, great. You want to bring these guys in units of 4 stands or of death 2, another good thing. Yeah, nothing. 60 points per stand. They are expensive. Let me think. Most people would bring 5 stands of these guys. So you're spending 120. These guys are 300. Most people bring them at 300 points. What madness is this? I would never do that. 240 points. Yeah, 4 stands I think is fine. Maybe less. Nothing else to say. These guys are mostly the same other than the fact that they have 6 attacks per stand. That's really nice. But it wasn't as ridiculous as before where they would have 2 attacks per model, which means 8 attacks per stand. I'd love to compare them to Vanguard clone infiltrators. I wonder if they've gotten any different. Legionnaires, 5 movement, 2 clash, 4 attacks. Okay, this is the same. They're all completely the same. Vessel shield support 2, straight up. Support 2. Does that mean... Oh my gosh, okay. Wait, what's their memories of old? It's just phalanx? Okay. So the maximum legionnaires can do in terms of support would be support 3, because every regiment gains support 1 innately. Oh man, okay, that means legionnaires can't do the ridiculous support 4 anymore. Oh, that's fine, it's not like it really mattered. Phalanx special rule. I'm gonna have to reread that. Everything remains the same. Yeah, everything's the same point-wise as well. What can I say about the Legionnaires? They're decent. They've always been the core, and they will remain the core. I'm happy with them. They're happy to be sacrifices. Icon Bearer. Was it 10 points for them? I think Icon Bearer was 15, wasn't it? If I remember correctly, the Icon Bearer was 15 points for the Legionnaires. Praetorian Guard, 5 move, 2 clash, 5 attacks, 5 wounds. 5 wounds? Praetorian Guard? 5 attacks and 5 wounds. Okay, so now we're looking at elites. Or at least more elite. More elite Legionnaires. 2 defense, 1 evasion. With the shield, so that's 3 defense. Do they still have Bastion? 45 per stand? Does that make sense? 3 times that is 120, 150. Actually, Praetorian Guard at this much per stand, worth it. Worth it to double. So make them from 3 stands to 6. Or 5 plus a character. They have Memories of Old plus 1 draw event. Wait, what? So they're, wait, okay, so Praetorian Guard, their Memories of Old is a Bastion 1 draw event. So do I use my action to activate Memories of Old to gain Bastion 1 as a draw event? Or do I activate Memories of Old and gain Bastion plus 1? I think we're going to have to ignore the draw event part, because that doesn't make sense. I think clearly what they mean is just Bastion plus 1. Oh wait, Bastion plus 1. Oh, so it's possible now. Linebreaker 2 might be useful at some point. So Bastion plus 1 means that these guys will have 4 at tier... we're looking at Dark Powers tier 1. These guys will have 2 plus shield plus Bastion 1 as an action. So that's defense 4. And then at tier 3, which is when you could activate Memories of Old twice, once as a draw event and once as an action, they have defense 5. So these guys remain defense 4 between Dark Powers tier 1 and tier 2. Excellent change. Praetorians always had this weird spot where they couldn't, where they had like a weird defense point issue. Sorry, I'm lost in thought right now. Is it worth it? I think so. At least they're progressing. It wasn't like in the previous version where they would drop to defense 4 maximum when they reach tier 2 suddenly. And tier 2 is the longest point of the game for Old Dominion. So this is good. It just means that the Praetorian Guard are going to be reliable at defense 4 all throughout. Everything's the same. Profane Reliquary, yeah. I like the Bastion +1, which means that they'll have up to defense 5 by tier 3 if they survive that long. Athanatoi, 5 attack, 5 movement, 2 clash, 6 attacks, same as Moroi? I would think that they'd be more. 4 wounds, 2 defense, 170 points. For a medium, alright. Bodyguards and Flurry. Flurry is very good. Counter-attack special rule. Counter-attack means that on a defense roll, if you roll a 1, you deal an attack on the enemy, and the enemy will have to roll their defense rolls for your counterattacks for every one that you roll on your defense. That's okay. I mean, it's never been amazing. These guys, in terms of surviving the battlefield, they've always had an issue because defense 2 is nothing. Most everything has cleave at least. But with the Hazlia's Shadow, I would never take a Thanator except with a Kurias of Hazlia's Shadow now. Because at least that way you have evasion 2, and these expensive hammers are actually able to do something and survive. Oh, okay, so it used to be that these guys had a slightly cheaper... No, these guys had Princeps of 30 points. So now that the Princeps are dropped down to 25, a standardized number, that's good. Standard Bearers for them also used to be a little bit more expensive. I think it was 15 points. So I'm glad to see that it's been standardized. Varangian Guard, 3 clash. That's the same. 4 attacks? 4 attacks for these elites? 6 wounds each, I guess. 4 attacks? Defense 3, that's the same. Cleave 2, Hardened 1. Hardened 1? Hardened 1, oh my gosh. They're approaching Dragon Slayers in terms of power, but the Dragon Slayers have Cleave 3. And yeah, they also have Hardened 1. Okay. Wait a minute. Okay, cool, yeah. Aventine Armor, I was thinking. Aventine Armor doesn't do Hardened anymore, it does Tenacious. Again, with the Varangian Guard, suddenly wait. Sorry, I thought for some reason that the Varangian Guard had Tenacious before. I feel like they did. Well, with Hardened 1, it's even better. I'd rather they have Hardened 1 than Tenacious. Now you can pick up Tenacious on them with the character. Okay, nice. 55 points per stance. They're a little bit worth it if you want to double up. Cleave +1, Line Breaker. They don't get additional Line Breaker? I mean, Line Breaker 1 is already really good. Cleave +1 per Memory of Old. Alright. I don't know what else to say over here. The Princeps. Oh no! The Princeps used to cost 20 points. Well, I'm a little bit sad about that. Caryatids, 6 movement, 2 volley, 2 clash. Everything's mostly the same. You know, for statues, for our heavy statues or melee statues, they have 4 attacks. 200 points at 4 attacks. I'm happy with the wounds 5. It used to be had 4 wounds, but 4 attacks? Why do they have wait, Caryatids, these are the archers. They're heavy now? They used to be medium. Defense 3. Armor piercing 2. Okay. Barrage 3 is the same. They have a Memories of all the fluid formation now, rather than having an Erinius. Is this worth it? It's still worth it because they have Barrage 3 at... Oh wait, no. It's not worth it anymore. It's probably not worth it anymore. They have 20 inches. What happened? What happened? They were amazing at 30. Oh man, 20 inches. At least make them 24, but 20 inches. Oh, I have to think about that. 20 inches for 200 points? Bone golems. Well, they'll be shot at by the time the Hellbringer Drake enters the battlefield. They'll shoot at each other and... okay. Bone golems. Well, okay, wait. Technically, the Hellbringer Drake has less wounds. So there's a good chance... Wait, Hellbringer Drake has evasion too, though. I think, if I remember correctly. Oh, man. Okay, I don't know about this. Plus, they're heavy now. At least the Hellbringer Drake comes in as a medium. Bone golems. 210 points? Wait a minute. I don't think that's how much they cost. I think they were 180. Or 200 points. One of the two. 65 per stand now? Yeah, that's definitely more. They were 60. 6 movement, 2 clash, 4 attacks each. 6 wounds. Okay, so these are mostly 100% the same. Cleave 2, hardened 1, impact 2. Impact 2? Oh, I mean, that's fine. Attacks 4, that's fine. Relentless blows and unstoppable. They're exactly the same. Exactly the same. Except for the stands costing a little bit more and also the points being 10 points more, I think. Canefores. These are the melee statues. 6 move, 0 volley, 3 clash. That's good. It's alright. 5 wounds? Oh, sorry. Just checking up on my recording. 5 wounds each. Worthy. 3 defense, 2 evasion. For 210. Okay. Cleave 1 for 210. Hardened 1? Okay. Impact 2 for 5 attacks? Flawless Strike special rule. Okay, I'm gonna have to read up on Smite because Flawless Strikes could be Flawless Strikes specifically says that that the enemy's defense characteristic is counted as 0, I think. Because there's a wording issue, right? If it says defense rolls versus defense characteristics, defense rolls would include the enemy's evasion. Flawless Strikes is different from Smite, so I'm pretty sure Flawless Strikes only reduces the enemy's defense characteristic to 0. If it was Smite, I think Smite specifically bypasses both defense rolls and evasion rolls, or just the entire defense roll itself using those 2 characteristics. Is that worth it? It depends. Canefores are essentially our anti-heavy. Is it worth it? Bukefaloi, another heavy, 6 move, 3 clash, 4 attacks. 4 attacks? 5 wounds. Okay, that's the same. 3 defense, 2 evasion. 2 evasion? Wait a minute. I don't think they had 2 evasion. For 220 points. Brutal Impact. Oh man, okay, their Memories of Old used to be Brutal Impact plus 2, so it was possible to get Brutal Impact plus 3 at some point. Cleave 3 is the same, Impact 2. Alright, Unstoppable. These are mostly the same. I'm a little bit disappointed they have Attack 4. Jeez, these are... I guess I'm fine with Wounds 5. Compare them with the Canefores. They're exactly the same characteristics-wise. Except for the Clash. Never mind. For the attacks. Canefores are more Blade Mastery. Well, the good thing is that at least they differentiated them. Bukefaloi are obviously line breakers. They'll go against big regiments. Canefores are more like specialized killers, anti-heavies, enemy anti-heavies. Like I would bring up, if I had a Canephore against Bukefaloi, I would put my money on the Canephores, honestly. But I don't like how the Caryatids became heavies. Centaur Prodromoi, lights at 8 movement, amazing. The only fast regiment in our roster except for the Fallen Divinity. 2 attacks, 2 clash, 4 attacks, 4 wounds. Okay, for 150 points. It used to be 170, if I remember correctly. I think this is worth it. Oh my gosh, all of a sudden, this is really good. Let's see. Brutal Impact 1 and Impact plus 2. Impact plus 2. They don't have Impact. Oh no, they used to have throwing weapons. They used to be able to do that. Oh no, so that means... Oh jeez, okay. So Centaur Prodromo, I used to use them to break down objective markers. They can't do that anymore. Do not do that. What are they useful for now? These are essentially your forward scout, but I would never bring more than one of them now. I used to bring two, but now I just bring one. Basically, you want these guys to run up as far as they can and then just sit. They are going to be your front. They're going to be your first 3 tokens. They should be. In my opinion, after seeing this, I'm like, okay. I wish that they had a banner to make it move 17 inches at least. A 16 is still not bad. But yeah, these guys are... I would use these, run them up, have them sit, create like a line of scrimmage, and then just deploy behind them. There's no way that these guys are going to... You should never bring more than one of these guys, in my opinion. Centaur Kerike, because they don't have a charge anymore. They don't have impact until you use Memories of Old. And they probably won't survive long enough to reach tier 2. Centaur Kerikes. Horse Archers, let's see them. Mediums, okay. 8 movement. 8 movement. Oh, okay, cool. I think they were the same. 2 volley. Everything's the same. 3 defense. I don't remember if they were 3 defense, but that's nice. Okay, for 180 points. Solid stats. Barrage 3. Everything's got Barrage 3 here. I want to look at the 100 Kingdoms Archers at some point. Do they have Barrage 4? 16 inches, the same. Armor piercing 1 and Deadly Shot. Exactly the same. Sure Shot special rule. Sure Shot just means that they can shoot over their allies without obscuration. So this is good actually, because I think if I remember correctly, shooting into melee, if your allies are in melee with another enemy, then it would always be counted as obscured. But with the Sure Shot special rule, this means that no matter what, shooting into melee, there should not be any issues. It just clarifies things. It's a good Memories of Old, but I would never use it over take aim and fire, honestly. Unless there was a big reason why. Cataphract, like maybe if they're firing behind the Fallen Divinity, because she's huge. Cataphractoi, 7 movement. These are 100% now the only thing that the Equistrategos will ever go on, the mounted Strategos. 2 clash? Oh, come on. Can we at least make them 3, 5 attacks? Okay. That's the same though. 4 wounds each? Oh, okay. I wish they were 5. 3 defense, 1 evasion. Same brutal impact. Impact 3. Alright. I'm fine with that, I guess. Their Memories of Old now is impact +1. And shock. Cataphractoi that would mean that Cataphractoi should only be used from tier 2 onwards. Because you need that Memories of Old, especially a shock. Like I said, you don't really use Cataphractoi to just charge into the enemy. If you're doing that, you're doing something wrong. What you want them to do is hold back, and then as people start dying, send them out. Once you reach tier 2, Cataphractoi, I kind of think I like this, because at least it helps identify the strength of the Cataphractoi. You want them to reach tier 2. Impact +1. So that would mean the mounted Strategos would have impact 3, and then the Cataphractoi would be at impact 4. I guess that's fine. It's not as good as what Unstoppable did for them. Well, Unstoppable Charge, where they would have 6 attacks. Because Clash 2 is nothing. Like, you're just barely going to get there. Okay, I gotta know what the Hetairos would do. If it still has... Wait, what happened to the Companion? The Companion was so good. The Companion gave +1 attacks per stand that's engaged. Now that it's gone... Okay, the Hetairos better be good. I don't want that overrun. These guys barely hit anything with Clash 2. So they better not get the overrun. Profane Sepulchre. This guy... Let's see. Oh my gosh! Is this for real? 36 wounds. 36 wounds? 36 wounds on a 270 points. Okay, well, first off, his points jumped a lot. I think it was like 200 points max. 270 points. He's almost as heavy as Fallen Divinity. And the Fallen Divinity's maximum wounds at tier 3 is 15. Oh my gosh, seeing 36 wounds on a Profane Sepulchre? I shudder to think what the Wadroon's T-Rexes would be, or the Jotnars, the Nord's giants. How many wounds does everything else have? 36 wounds on this guy, and he's just a medium. What's the Hellbringer Drake looking like? Before I said that the Caryatids would have to duel the Hellbringer Drake, and they might win because of weight, because they would have 15 wounds total between all three stands. But if the Profane Sepulchre, which is a medium class, has 36 wounds, then the Hellbringer Drake, I think, would have around 24, maybe 26. Why is the Fallen Divinity suddenly so... Wait, actually the Fallen Divinity is a medium, so is a light. So I'm fine with her having 15, I guess. 36 wounds for a medium. 3 defense... I'm sorry, guys. I'm freaking out over here because of it. 3 defense, 2 evasion. Very nice, the evasion, plus 36... How many... Okay, let's see. Let's roll 36 dice. 36 dice, and looking at evasion 2. That's 1 out of 3. So you could expect 12 more wounds. This guy essentially has 50 wounds that the enemy has to chew through. This guy will survive 10 rounds. Undoubtedly. This guy will survive it all. I wonder if that's a typo. Did they mean like 26? Because 36 wounds is so much. How would you eat that? Let's read the special rules. Devout on hallowed ground. Okay. Is there any... Just a moment, guys. I'll look it up in a bit, I guess. On hallowed ground. Or you can just look it up yourselves at the PDF, the official thing. Exhortation. When performing this draw event, choose one of the following effects. One of them? Oh, no. Okay, so... my thoughts. It's not going to be an aura buff anymore. It's going to be... Choose these things. Okay, whatever. Let's read it. This regiment suffers 6 wounds. This regiment suffers 6 wounds. Okay. These wounds do not cause resolve tests. This regiment... Well, why would it cause resolve tests? It automatically passes them anyway, because of no resolve. This regiment adds +4 to its attack's characteristics. And gains the Inspired and Cleave +1. Wait a minute. Okay, wait, let's continue reading. I don't want to say anything yet. This regiment suffers 6 wounds. These wounds do not cause resolve tests. Target friendly regiment within 8 inches counts as if they was under the effects of the Tier 3 Dark Power pool until the end of the round. Okay, third bullet. This regiment suffers 4 wounds. These wounds do not cause resolve tests. All friendly command stands within 12 inches add +2 to their attack's characteristics until the end of the round. All of a sudden it becomes Regalia of the Dominion. Tier 1 at the cost of 4 wounds. And then fourth bullet point, this regiment suffers X number of wounds. These wounds do not cause resolve tests. Why does it keep specifying that? Target enemy regiment within 10 inches suffers X number of hits, where X is equal to the number of wounds suffered as a result of this draw event this round. Weird. These hits have the armor piercing 1 special rule count as if originating from the target regiment's flank and do not cause resolve tests. What? Wait a minute, what? So all you're doing is you're getting armor piercing 1, and the enemy, if they have shields, do not apply shields. Okay. When suffering wounds as a result of this draw event, the regiment must be able to suffer the full amount of the chosen ability's wounds. If the regiment does not have enough remaining wounds, then the ability cannot take effect. Suffering wounds as a result of this draw event can cause this regiment to be destroyed. Okay, he can kill himself. That's fine. Oh, good. I'm glad to have Unhallowed Ground here. I don't want to look it up on the big rulebook. This regiment cannot be healed and counts as being size 2, regardless of its type. So it's a small monster. So monsters are usually size 3. In addition, this regiment counts as 5 stands for the purposes of seizing objective zones. Your army cannot contain more than 1 Profane Sepulchre. What the... Huh? Cannot be healed. Okay, never mind. So what I thought... Okay, Hellbringer Drake should be back down to like 15 wounds. Like 15, 16, however many it was. 36 wounds. At first I was like, man, this is incredible. But now, it's alright. But think... Okay, let's think it through. First, this regiment suffers 6 wounds. The first bullet point. Okay, why does it keep writing down these wounds do not cause resolve tests? I really want to know what the thought is behind that. This regiment adds +4 to its attacks characteristics, gains the inspired and cleave +1 special rules. Is this a permanent? I think it's a permanent, because it doesn't sell. Yeah, most of the other abilities say until the end of the round. So if you want to, you can go ahead and as a draw event, take 6 wounds, dropping you down to 30 wounds. And take 6 wounds, add 4 to your attacks characteristic. So let's say you suffer 12 wounds. You suddenly have 8. That doubles your attacks to 16. You have inspired and you have cleave +2. This thing, suddenly becomes a fallen divinity on demand. This is incredible. Fallen divinity on demand. Let's see. I mean, for the points cost, it makes sense. Suffer 6 wounds, target counts. So he can be... Profane Sepulchre can be a mini fallen divinity, can be a buff creature. Would it really be worth it for target friendly regiment within 8 inches? Counts as if under the effects. Okay, so I want to reread that wording. Target friendly regiment within 8 inches count as if under the effects. So wait, target friendly regiments, does that mean just 1? If that's the case, this is not really worth it. I'll take 6 wounds and then 1 friendly regiment within 8 inches. That's a small bubble, guys. I mean, as a monster stand, 8 inches is actually sizable, but just to give it 1 round of tier 3 for 6 wounds is not worth it if it's just 1 target friendly regiment. If it was an aura, I would do it. If it's just 1 regiment, it is not worth it. I don't know why you would do this unless it's nearing the end of the game and you really just need that buff. But I mean, it gives flexibility. It's good to have. I would never use it. At least I can't think of a way to use it. This regiment suffers 4 wounds. This is the third bullet point. Suffer 4 wounds and all friendly command stands within 12 inches. So this is essentially Fury. Pardon. So 4 wounds for Fury, or +1 attacks, or +2 attacks to the command stand. Is that worth it? I would do it for something like elite units. So by the time tier 2 activates at Dark Powers tier 2, I would start using this. It would be pretty decent to have extra attacks. For something like your Calafractoi, that's very important. For something like your Varangian Guard or your Canefores, pretty good. That said, yeah, I think it's good. It's a decent one. For 4 wounds, that's not bad. I would do that. And then the final one, you just suffer as many wounds as you want and then deal attacks to the enemy, ignoring their shield, essentially. Unless they have Iron Discipline. My question with that final bit, when suffering wounds as a result, must be able to suffer the full amount. So does that mean, okay, so let's say I use the 4th bullet, which is, I hurt myself and then deal a certain amount of hits on the enemy. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, this makes the Profane Sepulchre into literally the ticking time bomb. You know how the Fallen Divinity is? She is the ticking time bomb as she gets stronger? Well, this guy's literally... I will pull an Android 16 on you. If you guys don't know Dragon Ball, Android 16, for those who know Dragon Ball, grabbed onto Cell and was... the abridged version is coming to my head and just started counting down for the nuclear bomb inside his body to detonate, taking himself, every one of his friends, and especially Cell with him. This is what I'm seeing here. Like, last ditch effort, or if you just really want to, bro. Okay, you know what? Now think about it, right? So let's say you're fighting against the Wadroon. They are very, very much based around the one creature known as the matriarch on a T-Rex, or I don't know what they call it. I forgot the name. But the matriarch on T-Rex is like what, 16 wounds? Bro, you do this. You go up there. I'll sacrifice 20 of my wounds, and all of a sudden, 20 wounds plus armor piercing 1, and the enemy doesn't have shield. Plus, wait, they don't take resolve for it. I'll suffer 24 wounds instead of 20. I'll suffer 24 wounds to guarantee your death. It's more than possible. It's definitely more than possible. Oh my gosh. We have a nuclear bomb. This is so cool. This is so cool. I love the Profane Sepulchre. No longer do we like when you looked at the Faiths subsection of the Old Dominion, you would think, okay, these, like in the previous version, they were extremely defensive. They were like elites. Few units somehow get the job done. But now, all of a sudden, you have few units and they're all freaking scary. Anyway, command models and officers. Acolyte always counts as being within range of any spell. That's the same. Excluding spells with a range of self. It's the same. Apostate gains the flank rules. Same. Dark Cenotaph. Oh, this is different. This regiment's command stand counts as 2 additional stands of the same type for the person seizing objective zones. It's essentially Imperial Opulon. 2 additional stands? Oh no. Okay, no. Imperial Opulon still counts your character stand as 3 total stands, but this one means that the command stand counts as 2 rather than counting as 3. So as 2 additional stands, meaning, yeah. So Dark Cenotaph just makes it heftier. The command stand counts as 2 rather than just 1. Okay. Hetairos, oh my gosh, you gained the overrun. That's okay. The issue with the Cataphractor to me is that it kind of tries to sell itself as a charging unit. It's not. The Cataphractoi do not do what the 100 Kingdoms do, which is what I wish they kind of did. They are not amazing on the impact hits. What they're amazing at is using the shock. So, I don't know, like, gaining the overrun. At what point in the game, when you reach tier 2, will you have your troops breaking the enemy? You gotta be facing like first grown drones with your legionnaires in order for you to actually break that enemy regiment. Okay, yes, I mean, what's it called? The enemy regiment, if they're broken has so many more applications now. But to be able to specifically break the enemy and then have this guy, the Hetairos, activate his overrun because you're charging into a broken enemy, you have to have like 100% masterfully planned it. You don't usually plan that. Okay, wait, maybe now that I think about it. Okay, so if you had a duelist, which is, let's say, a Ziliarch. If you had a Ziliarch and then you had a mounted Strategos. If you had a Ziliarch challenging a duel on the enemy and they refuse, okay, they're broken. Your mounted Strategos with his Cataphractoi, they would charge into that, and I guess that's how it would work. But you would have a very specific combo. I would never bring the Hetairos. What happened to the Companion? The Companion was good. Okay, let's read. Command stand with this officer. Icon bearer. Must be the last stand to be removed as a casualty. What do you mean? Like, we don't even remove stands anymore. I think the icon bearer's wording needs to change because we don't remove we don't remove models anymore. And the command stand is always the last. According to the official rules itself, it specifically states that the command stand is the last stand to be removed as a casualty. So I'm not sure why you would specify it here again. Oh well, I mean, I guess it's just to help remind you that the command stand has to die last. Master Assassin gets the Deadly Blades. That's absolutely the same. Optio grants Vanguard. Absolutely the same. Princeps. A regiment counts as under the... Oh, wait a minute. This is different. This regiment always counts... This is exactly like the Count Palatine of the 100 Kingdoms. you're always under the inspired rule, which means that Kentark is again not very useful. I guess it is, but your Varangian Guard and your Athanatoi are very, very good now. With the Princeps, oh my gosh, bring those into the battlefield. You don't have to worry about them. They can do their own thing and they'll be strong because it is inspired. And finally, Profane Reliquary. Against the Aura of Death +1. Okay, that's the same. You can't... Can you build an Aura of Death army now? Not really. It's not as ridiculous as back then. The highest you can go for in terms of your Legionnaires would be 1 Profane Reliquary, 1 plus whatever your wizards could cast. Yeah, it's not amazing anymore. So Aura of Death builds have been reduced a bit. Well, that's all for the Old Dominion. Sorry guys that it took this long, but that's it for everything. Thank you guys for staying, and I hope that you guys have a good night. I love what the Old Dominion has become. I'm extremely scared of what happened with the Profane Sepulchre. I'm like, on one hand I'm super excited for what it's become. On the other hand, I'm kind of like afraid as well, because I'm thinking about kind of ridiculous meta builds they're going to be. Hopefully the Profane Sepulchre won't be released too soon so that people can like get used to it, but I'm definitely going to be using it, at least in my own time, just making proxies. Let's see. Epilogue. Check 1, 2. Oh, sweet. I hope this is working properly. My last scene. Okay. Let me just check on YouTube one more time. Okay. Looks like it's working well. Thank you guys for watching again. I'm gonna be streaming. I'm gonna be recording a little bit of Tales of Arise. Yesterday when I was recording for that game, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I stopped recording 20 minutes in. So I have to redo it. And I hate that. But yeah, thanks for sticking with me. This was such a long stream, but it was fun for me. Until next time, I'll see you guys in a bit. Ciao, ciao. How do I... Is it stop streaming first?